October 2nd, 2023. We are at Diamond Head Beach Resort. It is 9 a.m. All council members are present, the town attorney, town clerk, town manager. If you please rise for the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That brings us to the approval of the final agenda. There are a couple of things that I'd like to do. I'd like to pull the communication plan from consent agenda, item number C, for clarification from the town manager, as well as, if it's okay, to move public hearing D, resolution 23-123 for the variance of 185 Jefferson Street up to the first spot. They have a conflict with time, and out of the sake of interest, that's the only one that has a person on it of all the public hearings.
And along those lines, I would like to, the Let's Go FMV, I don't really think was placed on the agenda according to our policies and procedures, but I think we should move that to the end of the meeting so that everybody else who is here doesn't have to sit through a presentation.
I think there's a number of people that came as because of that presentation.
Yeah, I don't know, Becky, we can't really poll the audience, can we? Who came here to see the presentation or
Well,
not?
it's also the point that my understanding of our policies and procedures is that in order to get on the agenda, it's got to go through council, and you got to get two people on council, in council, to agree to it. I don't believe that was followed in this case.
Well, I guess we'll ask the town manager. Not sure who requested this to be on the agenda or how it got to be on the agenda, but maybe you can.
There's probably about a month ago, this was discussed. Am I coming across? It was discussed with one of the elected officials and one or two others. I don't recall everybody we spoke to, but it was placed on there because of the necessity to get this project moving forward in some capacity with the county when there was already a presentation put out before the public. So
You're saying you did have at least two council members talk to you about.
I know I had at least one, and we were in the same meeting together at some point talking about it, and I mentioned that it was coming up.
Okay.
I was the one who requested it.
Okay.
As a liaison.
But it's also, if you have to have, if two council members are talking about it, they should be talking about it in council for sunshine laws.
Well, I would ask for unanimous. Well, I don't want to ask for unanimous consent because we probably won't get it. But I do think this is a subject matter that affects everybody on the island. It'd be different if it was sort of a subset of an issue that affects just a few people, but it affects everybody, and as everybody knows, because these meetings go long, the more you are up front in the program, the more likely we're able to reach our audience, because obviously we're streaming this as well. So I just think we could reach a lot more people if we did it up front as opposed to way in the back.
And that's kind of another point, is that part of having things on a regular council meeting is if it's an actionable item. Is this presentation an actionable item?
I think it is. I think they're looking for a recommendation. It's time sensitive.
And the next step would obviously be, luckily we had Commissioner Sandelli and Dave Horner at the Let's Go FMB meeting. But they are waiting for council buy-in or not to take it to the next step with Lee County. So it is kind of an important step in the process.
And I think I remember Councilor Sandelli saying this is probably 4 to 5 years out.
I think I'm okay with leaving it where it's at. I'm sure we'll have these discussions as soon as he's done with his presentation about next steps on sending it up or not sending up with council recommendation or council approval or not. So if there's anybody else against keeping it in the agenda where it's at. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the final agenda as amended with item C from the agenda item C from a consent agenda being pulled and moving item D in public hearing up to the first spot public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
And a motion by Counselor King, seconded by Vice Mayor Adderholt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion approved. Motion carries 4-1. Counselor Veach objecting. Public presentation. Friends of the Mount House. Who's here? Ellen? Always so colorful.
Ellen Vaughn and Jim Steele, representing Friends of the Mount House, we're both island residents and both involved with Friends of the Mount House. And we're just here to, asking for our own public recognition on the fact that the Friends of the Mount House, early after the recovery of Ian, wrote a check to the Mount House for $10,000 so that they had the resources to replenish items that were lost from the museum store so that they had inventory to sell when they reopened the museum store. So, ta-da!
That's excellent. Thank you, Ellen. Oh. Thanks, Jim. I think you're going to give Vanna White a run for her money.
I heard there's a slot open.
Very nice. Next, we have Let's Go FMB. Alan?
Do you,
For the record, I'm Alan Shinosky.
Good morning, Alan.
Good morning. Good morning, Mayor, Council.
Dan, did we
manager,
skip over
staff.
public comment?
Did I? Oh, it's not on here.
Listed.
Yeah, it is.
not-
It's before the
Oh, I'm sorry.
presentations.
That's all right. I'm good.
Give us a minute. I'm sorry. Evidently, my glasses are fogged up. Thanks for catching that. Oh, I missed it, but public comment. We'll go back to public comment. Is there anyone here? Do we have anyone?
Yep.
Go ahead.
First up, I have Ellen Vaughn. Following Ellen will be Linda Miller.
Oh, I missed that.
Changing my hats and coming back as Ellen Vaughn, resident of Fort Myers Beach, ideally 7500 Estero, not so much now. I'm a member of, in addition to being involved with Friends of the Mount House, I'm also involved with CELCAB. And I'm here to say that I really would like to be reappointed to CELCAB. I think we have important work in front of us. The Mount House survived because the Calusa knew what they were doing, not so much Newton Park, so we have our work cut out for us. So I'm here to ask for your endorsement to be reappointed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen.
Linda Miller. After Linda will be Ron Banak.
Hey, we're here to ask today permission for permits for,
Gotta say your name, Linda, just for the record.
Linda Miller, manager of Shop Local Productions, and we manage Fort Myers Beach Farmers Markets. And we're here today to ask for permits for Moss Marina and Santini Farmers Market. And just wanted to let you know, Santini's a little bit pushed out, but we're going to get the permit and then move the dates. And that's kind of what we're trying to do today. And I wanted to thank you so much for approving the Times Square Farmers Market. It's been a huge hit. The first day was emotional. We've had press there almost every single Friday. And it's just amazing. I still get goosebumps thinking about how much it's brought life back downtown. So, and thank you all for coming personally. I've seen almost every one of you there and just really appreciate all the support you've given us.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I know we don't normally ask questions, but since you have the mic and there's a lot of people watching, can you tell folks when the Moss Marine and the Santini Plaza farmers markets will start?
Okay, so November, we hope to start the Wednesday market at Moss Marina, and we'll be between Rude Shrimp and the Moss Marina office trailer. And we've got about 40-ish vendors signed up, and we're very excited about that. And then Santini is still a little bit up in the air. I don't have any firm information. I wish I did. So I don't know really. There's just a lot of delays. And right now they're a little worried about having the public on the property. with the fence still up, I think.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, guys. Appreciate your help
Thanks,
and
Linda.
support.
Ron Benak, and following Ron will be Ed Rude.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Ron Benak, and I'm here to get your guys' support I put in for the Public Safety Committee. I had a 25-year career with Omaha Fire Department. I was battalion chief, acting assistant chief with them. Went to another department when I retired, so I've got a long history of public safety. And after 10 years of living here, I think it's time for me to throw my hat in and start getting involved a little bit more. So if there's any questions for me, I'm around all the time, or today if there's anything that you guys want to know. But public safety is something that's very important to me, and I think I have a lot to give to the Public Safety Committee. So I would ask for your support.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you.
Ed Rude.
Ed Rude, 8150 Estero Boulevard. Hello, everyone, and good morning. I know today you're going to be appointing some new members to the MRF board, or hopefully so. The current members of the MRF board have provided decades of years of experience with their knowledges of the turtles. I believe that I will bring a better balance to the board with my knowledge of the nesting shorebirds and seabirds to form a more rounded MRF board to protect our local wildlife. Since the area of the beach I overlook and monitor is the second most successful nesting shorebird and seabird location in all of Florida, I believe that I will help represent the birds more effectively in this area. I'm in communication with the FWC often and just spent a half a day this past Thursday with the head biologist of the Southwest FWC division. We were discussing the upcoming necessities and the shortfalls of the nesting area, and plan a community-wide meeting this spring of the property owners. I've not only lived and watched over the area and the wildlife for the last 12 years, but also have accumulated vast knowledge through years of surveys and studies of the birds that I have personally funded and had performed by professional experts. I have the support of the property owners and the condo associations on the south end for this appointment. They and I believe my appointment will help create a more balanced MRF board that would represent their needs and the wildlife's needs together. I have a love for this island and its wildlife, and I'll do everything possible to protect both of them. I respectfully ask to be appointed to this board. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie.
That's all I have signed up.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak in public comment? Come on up.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
We can.
I'm Wendy DiGattano, and I'm a present member of the MRF Advisory Committee. And I'm looking to be reappointed for the next 2 years. This is a committee that's very near and dear to my heart. I'm a lifelong learner. I'm a lifelong educator, and my experiences lend me very well to serving as I have successfully on the MRF committee. Speaking from the heart, you know, this is a small island. We're living on a patch of sand. It's shifting, it's changing all the time, and we have a very, very fragile ecosystem that needs our consideration at every turn. The animals can't speak for them. They can't speak for themselves. We are the ones who have to be proponents for them. I'd like to continue to do the work I've been doing with the MRF committee, and I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that'd like to speak? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Now we'll go back to Alan.
For the record, I'm still Alan Chinaski. Good morning, everyone. I am here to talk about the pier.
Ellen, pull that mic up just a
I'm
little bit.
sorry.
There you go. Yep.
I'm here this morning to discuss the pier, and I am just one member of a pier committee amongst many committees in the Let's Go FMB group, and we're very proud to share our findings and research that we've been able to put together over the past several weeks. So when the committee was formed in late June, we quickly hit the ground running. We formed a mission statement, and within that mission statement, we had 5 stepping stones to this point we're at today. And those stepping stones were research, site visits, rough design ideas, budget, and funding. So, Ian took many things a year ago, but in addition to many things, it took our calling card, our pier. We had an approximately 560-foot long pier with a T-terminus head. It was originally built in the 1930s. We were fortunate enough to convert it to concrete in '76. And then after a storm in '91, it was rebuilt to what we all know and love prior to last year. So, the pier is important. It is not only Fort Myers Beach's calling card, it is Lee County's calling card. It is featured on national advertising, license plates, apparel, and ironically, most recently when I wanted to give my dog Brody a little more square footage than our camper, and we booked a room at the Marriott, it popped up as my confirmation banner saying, hey, things to do around town. So the committee had to ask a very important question. Why rebuild the pier? You're on the Rebuild the Pier committee, but why should we do it? Well, economic revitalization. That pier is the #1 tourist attraction in Lee County, as well as an economic hub of this town. Inspiration and excitement, this was my personal participation factor here was, look, there were those that were forced or chose to leave shortly after the storm. There are those, many in this room, that are committed to rebuilding and staying, and there is a large part of our population that's on the fence. And we're hoping to spark a little excitement, a little inspiration, get people to buy in and continue to rebuild here. As I said, it's the #1 tourist attraction in Lee County if you remove beaches from the list. It would replace a historic landmark, and we feel it would increase safety for swimmers, boaters, and tourism activities we all see and participate in around this island. And of course, to fish. I had 4 generations of my family fish off that pier, so fishing off of it is very important to me. So, Lee County visitors. Hard to get a trajectory here, but we can work with averages due to COVID and Ian. Let's look at the past 2 years. We've had over 4.5 million visitors to Lee County, and we know that 35% on average come to this beach. So we have 1.6 million people who visit our downtown Times Square area every year. So what's possible when rebuilding a pier? We feel we can improve the visitor fishing experience. We could certainly increase capacity with more room. We can add substantial amount of parking, better pedestrian flow, increased safety, better facilities. We can maintain the town's property and easements that are in place. But what's not possible? There are an awful lot of rules when you build a pier. There can be no water-supported establishments above the Gulf of Mexico. No food, no vending, no showers below flood level. The Lynn Hall restrooms, as we've all recently found out, cannot exist where they were. And the Southwest Florida Wildlife Conservancy does frown on overhead casting. So shortly after the committee formed and we had a mission statement and a few meetings, Cindy and my wife of 30 years, Cindy, who's controlling this presentation today and who's had to put up with me talk about piers for 3 months, is jumped in the camper with our trusty dog Brody, and we visited quite a few, and this is just a small sampling of the piers we visited. And along the way, we ran into some great people. We met with town managers, we met with directors of public works, staff members, pier managers. There are several towns that have managers of the pier. And my wife and I are going to have many thank you notes to write when we get back. So we wanted to pay particular attention to the newer technology involved when constructing a pier. And if you look underneath the stringers, the cast stringers on this pier, and I believe this one was Folly Beach, you'll notice the decking from underneath. It's float-away decking. Many piers had float-away decking and breakaway railings. Surfside here, Their float-away decking is synthetic lumber, which is recommended. The wood lumber tends to be older piers and very tough to maintain. So, Juno Beach. Juno Beach is one of the early adapters of float-away decking. All three of these images are Juno Beach, and this is before a storm. This isn't after a storm. They do this in preparation for a storm. Whenever they have a hurricane warning on their coast, they remove the decking, stack it up back by the entrance, and depending on how severe the storm is, sometimes they just stack it up behind that first shade structure. Well, why do they do that? By doing that, it reduces the wave energy, and it prevents the panels, the rather large wood panels, from floating up and down the beach where they used to have to spend several days retrieving them. It takes 1 day to remove and 1 day to put back together. It's a little over the top, but that pier's lasted 20 years through many storms. There seems to be 2 piling options. Just about no one's using wood anymore. The traditional piling options involve cast concrete at various heights and submerged various depths. To the right, our friends in Surfside, who were kind enough to get us out on the pier before it's open. It's scheduled to be open by the end of the year. They're still dealing with ramps and railings and whatnot. They hired a contractor that happened to build bridges also. So these are poured-in-place circular columns. Saved the town 7 figures instead of all the cast. They weren't sure how the residents would appreciate the new look, but after they were erected, it was almost unanimous that they did like it because it reduced the amount of columns and they could see through it and past it a lot better. It creates a 30-foot span on that pier without pilings. So that's a pretty big area. It's nice. There were many different little interesting things on everyone's piers. This guy right here was a little cast sea turtle, and the kids were clamoring to get on it, get their picture taken on it. So it gave us the idea. And you'll see in our renderings, we have perfect spots engineered that could do perhaps a cast dolphin, manatee, heron, sea turtle. Opportunity to educate the visitors to our pier. In addition, these interpretive graphic panels under our shade structures. If we had back-to-back benches, we could tell the visitor about our town, about what fish we catch, what hooks we use, what type of bait we use. Just to go back to rules, fish cleaning stations. The only item on a pier allowed to have water. Now, if you have a fish cleaning station, which we do propose, they don't want you throwing the fish carcass because it'll choke the pelicans. So if you have a fish cleaning station in the state of Florida, it needs a grinder, a fish grinder. And if you have a fish grinder, it needs to be child safe and child operable. Accent lighting, there was all turtle-friendly accent lighting. As you see in the cast pillars here and here, everyone we spoke to recommended, thank you. Everyone we spoke to recommended not having overhead lighting. It's a dangerous maintenance issue. It's a maintenance issue with casting. It's a attractant to birds. Lot of fishing benches. And we proposed them in ours. Every pier in the state of Florida originated as a fishing pier, and we must recognize that. And this is a reef-friendly, eco-friendly sunscreen. So, rough design ideas. The first thing the committee had to do was acknowledge that we have many shareholders in this particular project. There's many stakeholders here. We have the town and easements owned by the easements owned by the town. We have the property and pier owned by the county. We have the neighboring Times Square businesses, as well as the surrounding businesses down Old San Carlos, and most importantly, the residents of Fort Myers Beach and Lee County. So the pier design goals were simple. We wanted it to be tasteful. We wanted it to maintain a simple appearance, acknowledge its historic roots as a fishing pier. We felt we could improve the visitor fishing experience by simply creating a separation of fisher and visitor space while maintaining interaction between both. If anyone remembers going out to the end of our pier, it was a little helter-skelter out there. It was a little blood and guts. We feel we can have both. incorporate modern building technology for longevity. First question we had to ask, and it is the first question my wife had asked every person we met. Why'd you choose 947 feet? How come it's 1,053 feet? No one could give us an answer. We heard, well, we wanted to get out where the fish were, which makes sense. Or we wanted to replace what we have, or we wanted to double what we have. There's no formula, and we were hoping there would be a formula. So we drilled down on 3 towns, Folly Beach, Nags Head, and Wrightsville. Their pier lengths are 1,049, 1,000, and 1,200 respectively. And we said, well, let's compare them. Maybe we can find this formula. And there is none. But if you look at the metrics, we blow away a lot of these towns. Population, households, annual visitors, all except for town size, because we're a nice little community here. But there is no metric. I was surprised to find out that Fort Myers Beach has the 3rd smallest pier in the state. So let's see how it stacks up with some of our neighboring piers. Dania Beach, Florida is 900. Folly Beach, 1,049. 1,200 at Wrightsville Beach, and Nags Head 1,000. Well, you're saying, hey, why are you comparing our piers to the East Coast? Let's see what the West Coast has. Venice Beach, 700. Pensacola, 1,471. Panama, 1,500. And Navarre, the biggest one in the state, 1,545. Well, apparently the fish are further out on the Gulf side than the east side. Now, there is a 638-page, I believe, book put out by the state that the committee had access to. And when we were talking with some friends, peer friends in North Carolina or South Carolina, they actually used that book to build their pier because it's the most stringent pier construction guideline book in the country. There's a warning in that book, and it states if you have a smaller pier, similar to St. Augustine, which was constructed at 600 feet, and then the powers that be want to harden the shoreline or nourish the beach, they put 600 feet of sand in. So the end of that pier is landlocked. The end of that pier is about a foot deep at high tide. So let's talk safety for a second. Now, I'm a boater. I've boated around this island many years. My children know every nook and cranny of that bay. So I was surprised to find that there's no rule for how close you can boat to a pier. I always understood it to be 300 feet or twice the length of casting. It's just an urban legend of boaters, I'm not sure. But when we contacted Coast Guard, Fish and Wildlife, and researched the town's ordinances, we couldn't find a distance. So we're just going to go 300 feet. That purple box represents a 300-foot safety buffer around the pier. And the white dashed line is the no boat buoys that we're all accustomed to seeing along the shoreline. We'll call it a boat lane, but with the old pier, pre-storm, when you got to a certain point, call it Washington, Jefferson, Diamond Head from the south, you'd start to angle out around the pier, around the goings-on at Lani Kai, around the parasailers and jet ski renters. And from the north, you'd do it just about it. You'd start angling out. And it creates this nice safety buffer for the parasailers and tourist activities. So let's look at it with 1,000 feet. So pretend it's a 1,000-foot pier with that same 300-foot buffer. Still have the same no boat buoys. And now there's the old boat line, the pre-storm boat line. And if you look at the new natural boat lane, it would increase the safety substantially, or the safe area we feel. That would be for the parasailers and jet ski renters and swimmers, and even give viewers from the new pier a nice view of the goings-on. So our committee chose 1,000 foot long. And then we had to discuss width. Now, I'm going to share with you some very preliminary renderings that the committee generated just for discussion amongst ourselves. Those final renderings are at the end. These were preliminary, so just bear with me. So our pier was approximately 8 foot wide, maybe 9. Of the dozens of piers that my wife and I visited, we couldn't find one less than 20 feet wide. They were averaged about 26. A lot were 24. So what you see pictured to your right is a 20-foot wide pier. And just so you know, a lot of it has to do with capacity. So we came up with two options. Option one, replace the pier in its same location, but longer, wider, higher. The challenge there is that the height the pier would have to be to match the business height in Times Square. You need approximately 178 foot of ADA ramp. There's no area for restrooms, and certainly capacity would be a concern. So option two, relocate the pier 60 feet north and incorporate it with an elevated plaza above Lynn Hall Park. The challenge here is increased cost, but the benefits are many. It would become a single entity project controlled entirely by the county. It would use no town lands or easements, keep them intact, remain intact. We feel, well, that it would increase parking at least 80 to 90 spots. And quite honestly, it'd be more like 100. And I believe I had a question the other day, how many spots do we have now? Well, standing in the rain, counting them, it's about 110. So almost doubling the amount of parking at Lynn Hall Park. We'd be able to create restrooms and showers, increase capacity. We would have a permanent home for the farmers market and many other organizations in this town, any nonprofit. It would be an amazing place to educate our visitors with all the groups that we have, Turtle Time and the many others. We feel the plaza can be controlled by an FMB, by Fort Myers Beach via an interlocal agreement, such as lease the plaza for $1 for 100 years. That way we retain permitting and control of the plaza. It would be a sunset celebration vibe. It would be a gathering place. It would become very similar, we hope, to Mallory Square in Key West. And just so you know, did we skip over Mallory Square? No? Not yet? Okay. So why do we need a bigger pier? Why do we need an elevated plaza? We're going to have a lot more people. A lot more people. So we did a little math. This is a partial example of just a daily pedestrian increase. We're looking at two resorts here. Margaritaville, we have the knowns. And choose one other. It could be Pink Shell. It could be Arches. It could be what's going on in Lighthouse, Mantanzas, Red Coconut, Myerside. All the new developments that did not contribute any people to this pier pre-storm will now be contributing more. So we know the occupancy rate in Lee County is 68.7%. These are very conservative numbers. We also know that the occupancy rate of Fort Myers Beach is a little higher. But let's look at the 254 rooms of Margaritaville. We'll look at one other resort at 350. We know with that occupancy rate and the average occupancy per room that we're going to have over 1,200 with just these two. And then if you look at a percentage of those walking across the street to go to Sunset, just those two resorts will increase the amount of visitors by 623. So let's take that. And we can calculate the average daily visitors at Sunset to Times Square. We know that 74% of the people that visit Lee County do not stay on this beach. However, 26% of them do. We know that 35% of that 74% visit the Fort Myers Beach Fishing Pier. So if you just take day trippers, new neighboring resorts, visitors staying on Fort Myers Beach, residents and hosts, as well as additional new resorts, it's a very conservative average daily number of 2,648 in season. Anybody want to take a guess? 2 times? 3 times? So we're looking at 4 times. We're looking at 8,000 people descending on Times Square for Sunset. Option 1, again, preliminary drawings. So we're just going to share them with you, and then we'll get to the refined ones. A 2-level terminus, fishing and visitor, multiple shade structures on the way out, 20-foot wide, 1,000-foot long. And this video, you'll see it'll point out quite a few concerns, in particular the ramp. So here we just assumed the county wouldn't want to encroach on county land. Just put it right back where it was. Very preliminary. There's the problem. At 12 to 1, you have over 169 feet of ramping. Now, it could be done differently, but this is just a quick rendering that we did. I mean, capacity is an issue, right? Imagine your friends or relatives or grandkids come to town, and you say, okay, let's go grab some ice cream at Times Square and go out on the pier. And the ranger at the, for Sunset, the ranger at the entrance to the pier says, I'm sorry, we're full today for Sunset. You can't come on the pier. Option 2.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
Now, maybe I missed it. Is it a requirement to have this entire pier above the base flood elevation?
It is not required.
Not required.
It's prudent, but not required.
Okay, so that's strictly to, if businesses do build up to flood, to connect them with the pier.
No, I am not here to talk about connecting businesses to anything. Is it possible? Sure. I'm here to talk about the pier.
Okay.
So the reason, without taking advantage of freeboard, businesses would have to be 19. We assume there's 3 feet of elevation in Times Square. So this is rendered at 16 foot tall and connected to a 16-foot elevated plaza, option 2.
Now, what is the requirement for elevation on the pier?
There is none.
There is none, okay, thanks.
You could put it out a foot over high tide if you wanted to. Again, not to scale, not to build back lines, just to get the idea amongst our committee members to start talking. That pier is located 60 feet north of where it was. It's the same pier, whether it connects to a plaza or not. The beauty is it doesn't block anybody's view. It's only 16 foot tall, and there are no residences here. And the Edison House just north is actually higher than that 16 feet already. And again, increases parking, we feel, at least 90, potentially 100 spots.
And Alan, are you, by saying that parking the other night, when it made me think about it, is that because of the spot where the bathrooms are now that are going to go away?
It's a big portion of it. Yeah, I mean, originally we envisioned this U-shaped, but we wanted to keep the shaded parking. So the Lynn Hall restrooms that would disappear, in addition to laying it out, not like a sand lot, but by a parking lot more effectively, you get an awful lot of parking.
Alan, as we look at this picture, where are which area is the restrooms? Are they underneath?
I'll point it, no, they will be on top, they have to be, and on the final rendering, we've accommodated for 1,200 for restrooms, and I'll show it to you on the final rendering. Sorry. So, like I said, much discussion amongst the committee. It was back to the drawing board. I personally felt we didn't give a nod to history with the new terminus being spherical in shape. We needed to return to a T. We wanted to fine-tune the actual plaza structure, and we had to have several conversations about ramping and pedestrian flow. And what we, so respect the build 2 lines, more dimensionally accurate, ADA considerations, and a nod to history, but an eye towards the future. So, the terminus, the teaser shot everyone's seen. The shot I've suffered through 400 Facebook comments about. My wife said don't be snarky, but I just got to throw this one in there. There was an awful lot of confusion about this railing setup here. Anyone who's confused by that, I don't want them on my team in the escape room. I'm just saying. So what you have here is 1,800 square feet. This is dedicated fishing space. It's not a cafe. No one has to clean the umbrellas. The umbrellas won't be there. This will be lined with fishing benches and the fishing public. Why did we make it lower? Anyone who's fished off a pier, you don't want to reel your catch up 19 feet, 16 feet, 20 feet. It's a lot better to reel it up a few feet less. That is an ADA ramp. You'll see the 30-foot widths that jut out at the shade structures. So there's 3 levels to this pier. You have 1,800 square feet of fishing, dedicated fishing. This is the stairs, that's the ADA ramp. Then you have 3,000 square feet of visitor space with an elevated, shaded visitor space, 1 ramp going up to it. These are large areas, right? This is approximately 60 by 80, 60 by 50, I believe. So yeah, 60 by 50 here, 3,000, and then 60 by 30 here, I believe, for 1,800.
Alan, you said that 2 levels was because of the reeling up the fish.
Correct.
But isn't there a secondary benefit? Doesn't it make the observation view so much better? Nobody's
Yes.
blocking your view?
You get a 360 view, and if there are handicapped or this shaded elevated structure creates even more of a view over the pedestrians here. So more people can have a clear shot at sunset, the horizon, the boating activities, the tourist activities. It would be a huge improvement capacity-wise and line of sight-wise over what we had.
But isn't it safe to say with this design that also adds knowing what I know about building, this adds a substantial amount of cost to the design
Surprisingly
of the
not.
building?
Surprisingly not. It was my concern as well. I mean, the pilings have to be there anyway if it was on one level, so it really doesn't add a lot of cost. And with regard to length, there's a lot of front-end costs, a lot of engineering, a lot of architectural. One town manager we spoke with said, yeah, we're going to do 780, but we said, let's make it 1,000 because it's very little just to add on once you get started. So that's the 1,000-foot pier attached to the 16-foot high elevated plaza. Now, this plaza can be anything. This could be landscaped lushly with native plants. This could be a performance space. This could be adaptable to many things. It could be like the High Line through New York. This could be sunset bleachers that double as performance spaces. And there you see restrooms. We picked 1,200. You can put as many up there as you want. It's 4 male, 4 female, which would accommodate 1,200. Here you have the elevator stair towers. Each tower could accommodate 2 elevators. We don't feel we need it. We propose 1 elevator in the north and 1 elevator in the south, and stairs on all 4. Now, what's not imaged here is the ramping. We took it out. We didn't have time to incorporate it. There's no landscaping here. Hats off to our architect friends who designed a home for us here on the beach. We tapped them for these renderings. They did them in a week and a half, so we're glad to have them. So this is the the south end of the plaza, which abuts to the Times Square area. We envisioned carving this out here and depositing the ramp directly into Times Square, right between where the Dairy Queen and the Greek restaurant used to be. In addition, we'd have multiple egresses, one on the north side ramping down to the beach, and stairs from the pier structure to the beach.
Question on that, I thought about this over the weekend too.
Sure.
And you said that the right side of the building or the bottom corner there would come up to where, is there been any discussion about not going that far? Ending this at where the town or the county's property ends, and then from there where the wavy wall is, maybe that could be the ramp, so you still keep that Times Square view corridor open from Bayside Park, so you still have that open view.
Correct.
So this is not what that's showing though.
So you mean the open view down San Carlos to the water?
Yeah, because I think.
That's still open. The plaza, this is the wavy wall right here, right where my point is.
Oh, okay, because I thought you said this was coming up to the Dairy Queen, that's what caught my ear.
No, this ramp would be coming down between, it wouldn't protrude in elevation to that point, but it would deposit the pedestrians from the plaza right to about here, because it would come down, we'd sidewind it a little bit, and it would deposit people just beyond the wavy wall, right there. So
Okay.
the line of sight
see
from
what
Old
you're saying.
San Carlos would go right to the water.
I see what you're saying.
I like to protect that view. My earliest memories are coming across that swing bridge, and that pier was my welcome mat. So you could see it as soon as you hit Old San Carlos off the swing bridge, right down, and I'd like to retain that.
I think it's important that you cover that, because over the weekend, that was a lot of the concerns that I heard from people, was that they thought this was going to block that openness.
Oh, no, it adds to it in our opinion. And again, this is a quick drawing. It may look a little bit like a Kohl's from street level. That can be worked on. Landscaped, these could be niched in for seating areas and what have you. But again, this plaza can be anything. I couldn't resist the wavy wall thing. So, increased parking, increased capacity, increased safety. And those are those shade structures right there that we'd like to see the turtles and dolphins and manatee, perhaps, creating perfect selfie spots, portrait areas, and little rests for people on the way out. So, how long does it take? How much money does it cost? Well, option one, wider, taller, longer, stronger, we feel could be 18 to 22 million. Option two, connected to an elevated plaza, moved a little bit north, 34 to 38 million. Now, the timing, a lot of people think a pier can be built relatively quickly. It can't. My wife and I averaged the couple dozen we visited, and it took on average 4.9 years. Not from a bunch of residents talking about it, but from approval of funding. There was only one pier that could be built in under 4 years, and it was privately owned.
Can you just briefly explain why that is, Alan? Because I think a lot of people are stumped by that. Yeah.
There are a lot of rules, and there are a lot of government entities and public entities that become acutely involved in the development of any pier along the Florida coastline. DEP, state, federal, local. There are more stakeholders in the construction portion of it than there are in just talking about it. It's a rather lengthy process.
And there's really no way around that based upon what you've learned, right?
Not that I can see, but certainly reducing the amount of stakeholders helps.
And that's why Naples can go a little quicker?
Naples had no plans before the storm, and I've tried not to compare us to our friends to the south, but no, they're a single entity. It was the city of Naples. And as I explained when I had the county managers here the other day, and to steal a phrase I think from Anita, we don't need to eat the elephant all in one bite, right? They should certainly put out a request for quote or an RFP for design services, similar to what our friends to the south did. Within weeks of the storm, they said, boom, let's start designing it. So they issued a purchase order to simply design. It gets the ball rolling. It gets people talking about it. At least you know what the community wants. Yeah. So,
thank you.
You're welcome. Funding. I won't be as kind as I was the other day because the commissioner was in the room.
Oh, he listens.
Our visitors to this great county in 2022 spent over $4 billion, and I hope you don't mind, I did round up to the nearest 100. Their spending of $4 billion created over $126 million in direct local taxes. This is not recirculated funds. This is how much local taxes were raised directly by that $4.1 billion. The TDC collected last year over $57 million. That's your bedroom tax, your hotel tax. Now, the $1.1 billion that everyone's heard about, the HUD CDBG funds of $1.1 billion, I must applaud Mayor Dan, our town manager Andy, for pointing out to the county that big goose egg you see there, as well as many other things for economic revitalization. Even on the application, it says the purpose of these funds should be for economic revitalization. Powers that be have decided that we don't need that. Now, I didn't
And
talk about...
I'll just kind of chip in because I was at the last meeting.
Sure.
And one of the explanations was that economic revitalization is not a simple item, that all the things you're looking at there are part of economic revitalization.
Right.
That our our business climate is more like Humpty Dumpty now. There's a lot of pieces that have to come together.
Correct.
To make it all work. And so one of the things like infrastructure and planning are all part of economic revitalization.
I agree, and as a former business owner, we don't like to wait for government. So there's a lot of businesses that don't have to, but I would like to point out, of that $1.1 billion, they've earmarked $55 million to give it away. The administration of that 1.1 is going to cost $55 million to hand out.
And I believe that's in the terms of from the federal government. That's
They're
the
allowed
terms
to
of
include
it.
up to 5%.
Right.
That represents the 5%. So, what does $38 million look like? 3.4% of the CDBG 1.1 allocation. It's only 30% of the annual DLT, the direct local taxes collected. It's only 66% of the annual TDC rake, And of that $55 million administrative tack on to the CBDG, it's only 68.6% of that.
In that annual TDC number, you've got, let's not forget that Fort Myers Beach is the #1 donor.
Major contributor to that kitty, correct.
But it's also, I mean, a lot of that TDC money comes, strings, but half has to go to the baseball and, a quarter to marketing. I mean, there's.
Correct. I know funding doesn't work like this, but you can't ignore it. However, when my wife and I owned a manufacturing business and we were planning CapEx or capital expenditures for next year, and we were looking at the most fancy, expensive piece of equipment, if it paid for itself in under a year, we didn't talk about it, we bought it.
Now, if you could put a baseball field out there.
Give me another week, I can put it in there. And again, just for graphic purposes, it would only take 110 days of the local taxes collected to pay for that fancy new pier. Or the additional parking over 10 years at 80% could generate over $20 million. So again, I don't know, could you float a bond and guarantee it with parking? I think you can. I appreciate everyone's time. If you have any questions, please reach out. I've had the wonderful opportunity working with the people at Let's Go FMB. We're very proud of what we're doing, how anything we can do to help you guys out. Quite honestly, you guys were our inspiration, my wife and I, to do this. We see how hard you're working. We just wanted to contribute. So,
I have a question. I understand the maintain the view corridor down Old San Carlos.
Sure.
One kind of issue, most resorts and things, they work very hard at capturing business. Which
Correct.
means if you have parking and you have an attraction, between the parking and the attraction, you try to filter people through shops, restaurants,
Correct.
that kind of stuff. One idea that was proposed some time ago, one of the many scenarios for Times Square would be to elevate what's now Times Square, and then all the businesses build up to that floodplain.
I would love to see that.
But now, in my thinking of business, that if we put parking on the other side of Estero, and then people walked through Times Square and the businesses to get to the pier,
Correct.
then that would be a way to try to capture some of that business. I'm concerned that if people just park right by the pier, and typically the county, I know with Crescent Beach Park,
Yes.
that there was like no vending. I mean, the idea of putting a place for food trucks and all that, there was a hard no from the county.
Correct.
So did you consider that scenario as opposed to putting a plaza in?
We
Limau Park?
considered that in addition to several others. This scenario of a plaza ramped down to Times Square, I can assure the businesses they won't be measuring their business increase by percentage, but by a multiplier. Now, raising Times Square to one level would be fantastic. The problem is you already have Estero-facing businesses built and open, repaired and open. You have the businesses behind those that haven't done anything, and then you have the businesses that were on the beach that have to deal with the coastal construction line. Now, this plaza would aid those businesses. Sarah can back me up here, but if those bathrooms or restrooms are located within 500 feet of the businesses, they don't need them. They just need an employee restroom. So that square footage they can pick up by having those restrooms located closer to those businesses. Now, they each need a stairwell and an elevator. If they could work together, they could share those utilities. Correct? The way it stands now, unless they get together, whoever builds first is going to win. So I would love to see them get together with the other stakeholders, create an elevated plaza, connect it to this plaza, create something nice underneath. It's, in my opinion, Times Square is a mess, and it's going to take everyone at the table to talk about it.
Alan, I can tell you the initial conversations that we've had with the county, this kind of plays right into the discussions. The elevated plaza, as you were talking about, Bill, it creates an opportunity for not just the town, but the county and the businesses
Right.
to be able to share resources and share some of the costs. I mean,
Correct.
just, I don't know how many exactly off the top of my head, 6, 7 businesses just on the one section of Times Square that would have to have elevators.
Sure.
All the ADA compliance things on those very small lots would be very difficult. This would
Yeah.
provide an opportunity for them to be able to share the resources, create a really unique area. so I can't speak for the county, but I can tell you they were very open to that discussion. Obviously,
That's great.
you know, it takes the town, it takes the county, it takes the businesses. Getting everybody on board is going to be very difficult.
Extremely.
But I think this is a good step in showing a visual of what that potentially could look like.
Correct. Thank you.
And how it goes from there, we'll see. But if I had just a couple of points to point out.
Sure.
In things that, knowing the county, like I think I do, they were very impressed with the attention to detail that was done. You know, too often people come and say, we want to do this, but there's no idea, how did you get there? How did, you know, what are the numbers to prove it? I think if you could hammer down a little bit closer at actual costs. Over the weekend, I did speak to some people that are maybe interested in doing a private partner,
Great.
private-public thing to maybe either speed it up or help with the funding.
Great.
So I think exploring those would be a good idea. I'm certainly in favor of you taking this forward to the county, presenting it to the county. You know,
Thank you.
if the board feels that, or the council feels it's an important thing, which I'm quite certain we all do, but I can't speak for them. But I think getting a little bit more detail before you do.
Sure.
It makes it harder to say no.
Honey, I got to talk about piers for another month. All right.
We'll get you some dog treats.
I appreciate the kind words. And look, right before the Let's Go meeting, our goal was just simply get people talking about this project. It's now beyond a year. It is long-term rebuilding. This is a long-term project, so we need to bring some of these long-term projects to the front burner. So that's that. If people are talking about it, I don't care if they hate it, if they like it. I'm just glad they're talking about it.
You know, and I think it would be interesting to work with their staff to try to find out some of the numbers that they're working for with the FEMA, the PA projects that they're going through with the pier, as well as Lynn Hall Park,
Right.
to see what kind of funding is that. You know, you have to outlay that capital before you can get it back from them, but assuming we don't close down. But figure out what that is, and maybe that can help offset some of these costs and bring it down to what a realistic number would be.
Sure. I was hoping to speak with Glenn, I think is the gentleman's name.
Glenn's like, yeah.
Yeah.
He's a good person to talk to.
So I don't know if they're doing anything directly with the pier, because FEMA's initial response is always, we don't do piers, but our friends in Surfside, they were able to obtain $10 million after initially declined because they don't do piers, but we pointed out to them that after Hurricane Sandy in New York and New Jersey, they did. So of the $20 million Surfside project, FEMA paid for half.
And there is some, if I'm not mistaken, Frankie, there's some ways that you can get extra funding through mitigation for resiliency and stuff like that. So this would certainly fall into that. But I
That's
think if
great.
you can get a little handle on those numbers and get that, you know, when people see 38 million,
Right.
it's a big number for what they think is just a pier.
Well, I was hoping to make it simple and hit the Powerball last night, but that didn't happen.
Doesn't hurt to try.
There's always tonight.
Yeah, that's right.
Any other questions for Alan?
If I could, Alan and
Yes.
Cindy, just thank you to you two and to Brody for a massive effort. Thank you to the subcommittee. Thank you to Becky, who is, I think, part of your fearless leadership, and John. I see some other folks out there. McLean, Councilor Woodson is the liaison. This to me, the pier in particular, is spectacular. I can't envision a better scenario for the pier. I love the plaza concept. I'd love to see a traffic study from the county at some point, just to get a sense of how traffic would flow with those increased parking spots, just to get a better understanding, but I know that's down the road.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to thank you for having a sense of urgency about
welcome.
this, because this is really going to help jumpstart the process.
Thank
So-
you. We're happy to do it.
And if I could, just a side note, and this may be a little obscure, particularly after Thursday, we're still looking, and Andy's leaving, but maybe Frank knows. On the funding piece, it appears as if the state of Florida is picking up a larger share of the beach renourishment piece, which should, we had all that funding secured for beach renourishment, the majority of which came from the TDC.
Great.
And they made a big commitment to us, and if the state is to pick up a much more significant share of that, that should free up those TDC funds. And that's not new TDC funding, that's money that was already authorized. So Chad back there, are you watching? We need to make sure that we don't lose those committed TDC funds if the state decides to pick up a bigger portion of the pie, which would be great. But I could see the TDC then all of a sudden finding other sources for that income, or those funds that had already been set aside for Fort Myers Beach. And I mean, I think it potentially could be between $5 and $10 million. I just want to make sure we keep
Fantastic.
that captured towards our island, because it's already been committed. And again, if the state's going to help us, but in a much more significant way, and I think, Mayor, I think we've talked about this a little bit, if there's a way for us to keep those funds committed to our area, that could be a nice jumpstart to this project, so.
Fantastic, Vice Mayor. I always say 5 to 10 million is always good. It's a good
Yeah,
start.
It's a good start. Thank you for your efforts.
Yeah, I think this presentation would go really well for the TDC Council.
Oh, excellent. Great.
I think you bring it before them and get buy-in from everyone else. That could be very beneficial.
That'd be great. I might have to adjust my charts a little bit, but that'd be great. Thank you.
Before you go.
Sure.
Yeah. Now, a couple things about the design that I'd like to maybe understand a little fully.
Please.
So how do you anticipate connecting this plaza to the buildings that would be built up to flood?
I don't.
Okay.
Could it be? Yes. But when we looked at that as a committee, it became, we didn't want the attention to be put on Times Square. Could they all be connected at 19 or 21, depending on Freeboard? Certainly. Could they share facilities? Absolutely. But this was more about the pier. And we were trying to remove stakeholders, and sort of by moving it 60 feet to a plaza, it's the county. We keep it where it was, it's the county, it's the town, it's the neighbors. So they're removing stakeholders, but still providing input, we think is important.
And I appreciate that, although the stakeholders, of course, are stakeholders for a reason.
Sure.
And I know it's been, the idea of having an elevated Times Square has been floated. I'm just not sure if it would get the kind of traffic needed to be sustainable for the money that would be put into it.
The number one tourist attraction in Lee County is the Fort Myers Fishing Pier.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure, the other thing is the plaza now, unless the county changes their tune about having vendors and things allowed on that plaza, it seems to me it's going to be a whole lot of concrete without a lot of amenities for people or a lot of ways to capture that business.
Right. I had comparisons drawn directly to Mallory Square at the end of Duval Street in Key West. I must have deleted them, but at Sunset they have 40 street performers, all paying the town money to perform. This would be the perfect venue for every nonprofit to have an permanent educational structure. It could be lushly landscaped with all native plants. It could be educational. It could be benching. It could be anything. Most of all, it's adaptable, right? So really, everyone's always looking for a gathering spot. This creates a gathering spot for any occasion. Any occasion.
And I'll also just say that I feel a little remiss that council hasn't taken this up on its own in a more formal process.
Sure.
A while ago. But we all know in the last year it hasn't.
It's been busy.
Yeah, it's been busy. So, but I appreciate the effort.
Nope, thank you. And we appreciate taking it off your list, or at least sharing it with you. So thank you, everyone. Thanks,
Thank you. Next, we have local achievements and recognitions. Councilor Beach.
Yeah, the Island Hopper. That was a great event. I was out and it was hard to find a table. I mean, it was really brought in a lot of business like it's supposed to do, and people seemed pretty happy to just have that event back on the island.
Very good. Councilor Woodson.
This last week was just a whirlwind, actually, from the 1-year anniversary and then the Island Hopper and the work that went into preparing our downtown area by our town staff before the Thursday presentations. I mean, that was amazing. I don't know that we've had employee appreciation lunches. Obviously I haven't been on council, but I was invited to the employee appreciation lunch that we had at Mound House, and to see all the people and all the whole team come together, and the sincere thanks that was given by our town leaders, our staff. I mean, it was really choking, tearful, but appreciative. And I just hope that we do that often and more for our staff, because I think we have some good people.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you. Vice Mayor Adderholt?
Just briefly, I would this past Thursday for the 1-year remembrance, the whole day's set of events, I thought was the very appropriate. It cast a dynamic of reverence, but it was also aspirational towards the future. And I just thought it was a perfect balance. I just want to thank everybody who was involved.
Thank you. Councilor King?
I'll kind of echo on what the Vice Mayor just said. Going back to last Thursday, I wanted to thank everybody that came down to this community for the remembrance ceremony, and I want to thank Kim, Ed, and Beach Talk Radio for that beautiful remembrance piece of art that honored those that lost their lives and honored the families as well. It was exciting to reveal the Times Square clock. Thanks to the Mershmans for such a generous donation, and thanks to the media that came down here and broadcast from Times Square, Diamond Ed, throughout. They put the spotlight back on us, and we appreciate that. And finally, as Karen alluded to earlier, thanks to the town staff, because just the amazing job and their dedication is just kind of overwhelming, and I'm very appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor King. Just to piggyback on what everybody said, I'd like to thank BMI and Island Hopper. It got to sit out Friday night at Bayside Park and watch the acts play and see the people smiling and the kids dancing, and it brought joy to everyone. So we're thankful that we were able to get that back just 1 year after the devastation, and look forward to it growing. Beach Talk Radio, obviously, for their kind donation of that plaque. If you haven't had a chance to see it in person, you can come into Town Hall. It's right inside the front door by the front desk, so you can come in and take a picture or come and see it in person if you'd like. And also the legislators from all levels that came down on Thursday to help us remember what happened a year ago. You know, you send out letters or invitations to some of these things, you think nobody's going to show up, and then everybody shows up. So it was quite humbling to see the amount of people that were there, both from locally and across the state, to support not just us, but our neighbors to the north, Sanibel, as well as all of Lee County, in the recovery that we're all going through. So thank you. Next, we have advisory committees, items, reports, and appointments. The first one is the local planning agency. It's
Just for expediency, the Anchorage Committee and the Audit Committee are two that have the number of applicants either equal to or lower to the number of openings. So I think we could maybe make a motion to just accept all the applicants for those and not have to do the vote.
Do we still physically fill out the paperwork even though it's a unanimous,
You wouldn't need to?
wouldn't need to, okay.
No.
Is that you making that then as a motion?
I will make that as a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll second that motion, but I would just say to our friends and neighbors out there listening or in the audience, we're still short a couple folks on the Anchorage Advisory Committee. And as the liaison to the Anchorage Advisory Committee, I would put a call out to anybody who's a boater or loves the marina life or just wants to contribute to the island. Lots going to be happening on that front. We have a very, very robust harbor master in Austin who has a great vision for the future. And so I think it's an interesting way to serve the town, particularly if you have an interest in boating or anywhere in that dynamic. So we have two wonderful people. One incumbent, Doug Ekman, who's also on the LPA, and also a new applicant, Chris King, who's a very dynamic leader, and the better half of some people we know here. But I would just say that we have two more openings there, and if anybody has an interest in there, reach out to Amy Baker, our town clerk, and we'll find a way to get you on that advisory committee.
Thank you. We got a motion. Did we get a second?
Yes. Vice Mayor.
Vice Mayor, okay. Got a motion by Councilor Veach, seconded by Vice Mayor Adderholt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries unanimously. Now we will go to the local planning agency. There are 3 seats open and 5 applicants. So we'll fill that up and then hand them over to you.
Wait a minute, I thought you handed you the wrong one.
See, I warned you.
I know.
I warned you.
That'll make it tougher
I won.
for Amy.
Yeah. I went from the top of my upside down list.
Be just a second. We'll move on to the next one is the Bay Oaks Campus Advisory Board. Take a few seconds to fill that out. There are 4 candidates, or there are 4 seats open, and there are 5 candidates. So while Amy's working on that, we'll fill this out, and then we'll go back to the committee members chosen for local planning agency.
No, Becky, I think that our instructions on this from the, from our ordinance, the founding ordinance, says that we need special council approval for someone to serve on 2 committees. Does that have to be a separate action, or is in voting on somebody enough?
Okay, these are purely advisory committees, correct?
Right.
Okay. Yes, I would do a separate motion
Okay.
For each one?
for if you're going to have someone who is, the LPA, are any of the other ones, anything other than advisory?
The audit committee is statutory as well.
Then they can't be on both LPA and the audit committee
Oh, okay.
because of the state law.
So Doug
the
is on the
dual office
LPA,
holding.
but it is not a problem with him being on the Anchorage committee then?
No, it's because it's advisory.
All right. And I think too, Barbara Hill is on BORCAB and CELCAB?
True.
You got a tally, Amy? Okay.
The 3 positions are filled by Anita Saracita, James Bowen, and Jane Plummer.
Congratulations. You want to grab our sheets now for Bay Oaks?
Sure.
Next will be the Cultural and Environmental Learning Center Advisory Board, CELCAB. There are 3 open seats and 5, there were 6, 1 withdrew to be considered for another committee. So there are 5 seats, 3 seats open with 5 applicants.
So with this too, Becky, there are 2 people on this who are, there are 2, so there are 2 people who are applying who are not registered voters. Now, I think that's a give preference to people who are, but that's nothing needs any kind of special motion, I assume?
Again, this is a committee that is not, or
Statutory.
that is advisory.
Right, okay.
Okay, then you shouldn't have to have a motion on that.
Counselor Veach, would you mind, since you've done that research, can you tell us who's not a registered voter?
I see Allison and Laney as not being registered voters.
Thank you.
CELCAB.
Just let us know when you're ready, Amy, with the forecast. You're ready? Okay.
I'm ready.
She's got a system down.
I know. The 4 seats for BORCAB are going to be Jesse Field, Becky Guidry, Barbara Hill, and Joy Sullivan.
Congratulations. Has everyone got their CELCAB filled out?
Yep.
Well, she's working on those. The next one will be the Marine Resource Task Force, Marine and Environmental Resource Task Force. I always forget the E. There are 3 open seats, and there are 8 applicants.
And the same on this one, there's 3 there that have applied that are not registered voters.
But they are property owners.
Property
Which
owners.
is-
This is, like I said, it's a preference. And there's one who even stated in his application that he's not around in the summer when the committee meets, which could be problematical.
You ready?
Yep, the 3 vacancies for cell cab will be filled by Patrick McCowan, Ellen Vaughn, and Becky Werner.
All right, thank you, congratulations. Does everyone have their sheet filled out for Murph? Next will be the Public Safety Committee. There are 3 seats open, and there are 4 applicants. While she's tallying that one up, I just want to personally thank everyone that takes the time out to put their hat in the ring, if you will, to apply to be on these committees. It is a commitment to the community, and being one that served on several of them, it does take a little bit of time, but it's really rewarding in seeing some of the things that you talk about and you advise the council out actually come to fruition. So thank you for those that have applied. Those that maybe didn't get appointed today, please stay involved and continue trying, because we don't always get on the first time, but if you really want to be involved, just keep trying.
And like the vice mayor said, there's 2 openings in the Anchorage Committee.
Yes.
And yeah, I think this can be appointed any time if there's an opening. And I think, kind of going what you were saying, I think everyone on council here started out on an advisory committee.
Pretty much.
Not quite.
Oh,
Yeah.
not quite.
Down at this end, not so much.
Yeah, but you brought donuts.
Okay, so we're going to have another vote on Murph.
Okay.
David Nussbaum has a vote of 4 votes, so he is on. And then there's a 4-way tie between William Altoff, Edward Schoonover, and Mary Rose Spalletta. So we're going to pass out another ballot. Those are the only 4 we'd like you to vote for.
Okay.
And you're going to vote for 2 of them.
Did you print
2.
out spare ballots for this?
Intuition? You're always prepared. Always. So we're just voting on 2, correct?
Just voting on 2 out
2.
of those 4 that I told you.
Okay.
Would you mind going down there?
Okay, so you said Dave Nussbaum is on, right?
Dave Nussbaum is on.
Okay.
No, can't you?
And he's the only one that's on?
So far.
Okay.
So you're voting between William Altoff, Edward Schoonover, and Mary Rose Spalletta.
Everybody ready? You're getting your steps in today. That's a nice jacket. Oops, I'm sorry.
Go ahead with public safety.
We could do public safety. Have you got that one? Do you want to do Murph first, or do you want to do public safety? Or both?
Yep, just give me
Okay.
a second.
No problem.
Well, we can do our part, like get our forms filled out.
Well, I would assume everybody probably already did. Probably shouldn't have assumed. Guess while we're taking this, I will share it publicly that, let me find it quickly. There's a coffee with the cop. They sent some information in. I'll say it while we're killing some time here. I could give you the information as soon as I find it. It's at Mojo's on October 24th, I believe, but.
Yep, it is the 24th,
24th?
10 a.m.
It is at 10, okay. 10 to 12, is that what it is?
10 to 11, I thought.
10 to 11? Yeah, I just want to make sure I get the right exact time, so. Yeah, it's Tuesday, October 24th at 10 a.m. at Mojo's Coffee Bar. Join us for coffee with a cop. 1740 Estero Boulevard,
Okay.
in case you didn't know.
We
Okay.
have one more. William Altoff now. Now there's still a three-way tie between Ed Rude, Edward Schoonover, and Mary Rose Spalletta. So I'm going to give you back your ballots, and you circle the name of the one person between Ed Rude, Ed Schoonover, and Mary Rose.
Okay. Okay.
Write your name in.
This is you.
Breaks it
Yep,
down.
me, yep.
Okay. This time we're going to get it.
Do you want to do public safety while we're doing this one? Okay.
These and then I'll pick up public safety.
Public safety.
Okay, this is not a clean one, so.
If this doesn't work, do you have straws we can draw?
No, I don't. I'm leaving it up to the attorney for the third round. Wait, couldn't you just let a couple?
No, she's doing round 3 on Murph.
This is public safety.
Public safety right now.
Oh, public safety.
And then the
Then the
Third
Murph.
round of-
Well, you're probably going to want this then.
That's your Murph one?
That's the public safety.
Oh, didn't I take yours?
You took my Murph.
Okay, so the 3 seats for public safety are going to Ron Benak, James Nickel, and James Bougelet. Bougelet?
Very good. Congratulations. Look forward to your service.
Okay. Try this a third time.
Hopefully the last round. Right, well, I don't either. There you go.
He didn't circle it.
All right, it's circled? No.
Circle?
I was confused by, I didn't hear the circle part, sorry.
I'll give this back.
And it's going to be a two-way tie.
Okay. Circle the one you want.
Yes, ma'am.
and Could you announce the, I guess, 3 that are up for it?
Out of the 3, it would be.
Well, let's wait until
Well, no,
Mr. King
yeah.
votes.
Thank you. Sorry for
That's the one you
misunderstanding.
want.
Okay, so now you tell me what to do. What's that two-way tie?
It's now a two-way tie with Ed Rude and Mary Rose Spalletta. So, can you see?
So just choose, okay. I think we can figure it out.
This will break the tie. This will break the tie because there are 5 of them.
So we can only vote for Ed or Mary Rose, right?
Yes, and circle.
Got you this time.
Now we go back to the original one.
Wow.
So who are, do we have two winners already then?
Yes.
And who are the two winners?
Dave Nussbaum and Edward Schoonover, right?
No, Bill Alto, I thought.
No,
Bill Altoff.
Bill Altoff.
Oh, was it Bill Altoff?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. See?
Yeah,
It
Dave
happens to all
Nussbaum
of
and Bill
us.
Altoff.
Let's go. You want this?
Okay. The third seat will be filled by Mary Rose Spalletta.
So can you repeat the three? Just so everyone is clear.
David Nussbaum, William Altoff, and Mary Rose Spalletta.
Okay, congratulations. Next, that brings us to the approval of the minutes. There, go ahead. There's no minutes in the packet.
No, I didn't receive them until late Friday afternoon.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
If there's no minutes, is that?
You'll
Can we
need to
just-
do it at the next meeting.
Next meeting, okay. So we'll just, do we have to table the approval of the minutes?
Yes.
Is there a
I'll-
motion to
I'll-
table the approval of the minutes to our next regularly scheduled meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Counselor Veach, seconded by Counselor King. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Next, we have the consent agenda. Item C, communication plan was pulled, so we'll discuss that first. Go ahead, Andy. What would you like to share?
Thank you, Mayor. After I reviewed that, and I spoke to the mayor this morning, there's a couple of things in there that, one is just absorbed into the budget because it's a town-wide, it's buying tents and things and items to give out for, merchandise and things like that for our branding. And the other thing is an intern, and we are not going to get a paid intern. It'll be, if we get one, it would be a non-paid, working through the college or university nearby for that. That's the only change.
Is there a motion to approve the communication plan as amended by comments made by the town manager? I'll make a motion to approve it.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously.
Would you like a motion to approve the rest of the consent agenda?
I was just going to ask for that.
I'll make a motion to approve items A and B in the consent agenda.
Is
I'll
there a-
second.
Got a motion by Counselor Veach, seconded by Counselor Woodson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Next, public hearing, we will start with item D, Resolution 23-123, VAR 202-30071, 185 Jefferson Street, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, approving with conditions, denying variance VAR 202-30071, an increase of 2 feet to allowable fence height within the front setback to allow chain link fence to extend 19 feet into the front setback, to allow a fence within the visibility triangle between 2 and 6 feet above grade, and providing for an effective date. The next item on our agenda for review of various land use requests for the benefit of the public, please be aware that these items are quasi-judicial in nature. Our attorney will further explain.
Variances are quasi-judicial in nature, which requires a public hearing to comply with procedural requirements established in Florida law and in our land development code. Quasi-judicial proceedings are less formal than proceedings before a circuit court, but are more formal than the remainder of our meeting, and follow basic standards of due process requiring certain notices, application of the correct standards, and decisions made on competent and substantial evidence presented to the town council in written documents or oral testimony. The town council will evaluate the testimony and information for each item and draw a conclusion regarding whether the criteria in the land development code or state law as may be applicable has been satisfied.
Pure speculation or mere opinion not based on competent facts cannot be legally considered by the town council in evaluating this agenda item. Testimony by professionals who are qualified as experts in a particular area is considered competent evidence by the Florida courts, as well as testimony by neighbors and residents who have fact-based information or testimony based on personal information. If you intend to speak, please keep this in mind. When you come forward, please state your name clearly for the record, whether or not you've been sworn in, and your qualifications or interest in the matter. Were all the agenda items properly advertised if they are required to be advertised?
Yes.
At this time, if any town council member has a conflict of interest that will prohibit them from voting on this item, please disclose this for the record.
Counselor King?
None.
Vice Mayor Adderholt?
Are you asking for conflict or whether we've had any communication?
This is conflict.
No.
None for me as well. Counselor Woodson?
None.
Counselor King? Or Veach?
None.
Okay, at this time, if there's anyone present, including the applicant, property owner, or staff who intends to provide testimony in this hearing, please stand, raise your right hand, and be sworn in by the town clerk.
Ready? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Right, all parties have been sworn.
Okay, Mayor?
All right, I've already read it into record. I shouldn't have to read it again, correct? Okay. If any town council member has any ex parte communication to disclose, please let us know the subject discussed and the identity of the person, group, or entity with whom the communication took place, any correspondence that you received, or observations made of the site. Counselor Veach?
Yeah, I've spoken with the applicant. I'm familiar with the property.
Counselor Woodson?
I'm familiar with the property.
I'm also familiar with the property and have spoken to the applicant about it. Vice Mayor Adderholt?
I have spoken with the applicant and am familiar with the property.
Counselor King?
No contact, just familiarization.
Okay. Will the staff please proceed with the presentation on the item?
Good morning, councilors. My name is Jason Smalley. I'm in planning and zoning within community development. I'm here to present the variance request for 185 Jefferson Street. As has been mentioned previous to now, there are 3 individual asks that are on this application. The first ask is to allow a fence to be taller than 4 feet within the front 25-foot setback. The applicant is requesting a total overall height of 6 feet for the front area fence. The second request is to allow chain link fence within the front 25-foot setback. Normally that area would be limited in the type of material that could be used, and so they're asking to protrude into that 25-foot area with 19 linear feet of chain link fence. The last ask is a request to have a structure within the what is considered to be the visibility triangle at the edge of a driveway onto a publicly maintained road. And the code limits the maximum overall heights between 2 feet and 6 feet in those areas. So the requests today are all 3 of those asks. Collectively, they would allow the applicant to rebuild a fence that the staff can attest to being there previously in a similar design and height to what is being requested today to be rebuilt. The applicant is here with their outside consultant. If there are any questions for staff, I am here to answer any of those.
Are there any questions for Jason? I just have one. Staff's recommendation is denial. Can you, for the record, just state why it is that the staff recommended for denial?
Specifically, the denial was in reference to the idea that variances should be done for things that are considered to be health, safety, and welfare concerns. And our only concern here in that respect was just the area known as the visibility triangle. They did discuss that at LPA as well.
Yeah. Any other questions for Jason?
How far would they have to come in to solve the visibility triangle issue?
They would wouldn't be able to create a 90-degree angle right there at the edge of where the driveway is. It instead would end up being somewhat dog-eared and about 5 feet from what would be the corner of that 90-degree that is being proposed. That would have to come inward somewhat. It would be a dog ear effect, about 5 feet from where they're proposing it right now into the applicant's property.
And is the same visibility triangle rules apply whether you're on busy Estero or a quiet side street?
So depending on the type of structure and where it is located, it's generally going to be between 5 and 10 feet. On Estero, generally you're looking at 10-foot dog ears, if you will, in those visibility triangles.
Has staff received any objection to this application?
No, we have not received any objection to it.
Okay. Any other questions for Jason?
Jason, I just wanted to reiterate a conversation I think we all had at the last council meeting regarding using this, not based upon the merit of it, but the procedural piece of this, the cost for the application. You're working on trying to work on some suggested reforms based upon our last council meeting?
Absolutely. Staff has taken those to heart, and we're going to come up with a refinement of what the cost sheet actually says right now, the fee schedule, pardon me. So I think we're going to be bringing you language to refine that and then take your suggestions about collapsing them down into a number of variances that would have a single cost, and then they would increase from there depending on the number of costs.
And also, the cost would increase based upon the complexity to staff and time and effort, correct?
I believe so. You will see that sort of rubric when we come up with the language for it.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jason.
You're very welcome.
Will the applicant please proceed with your presentation on the item? Kara?
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. I'm here this morning on behalf of 185 Jefferson Street and the variances that were presented before you. I would like to note that we are in agreement with the conditions that have been added to the resolution in the event that this variance does get approved. The condition and/or the concern, I will address the visibility triangle. We feel that we are, although we're not in compliance with the code per se, and hence we need the variance, this property, this fence is set back 5 foot from the edge of road, which in essence accommodates our visibility triangle. The fence has been in existence for at least 30 years that we know of. No incidents have occurred. We have letters from the neighboring property owners in favor of this variance and in favor of replacing this fence. I'd like to make a side note that this house is probably one of the very few remaining structures that will turn 100 years old in 2 years. So the property has been in existence a very long time. This fence has been a part of that for a very long time. So with that, the owner is here if we have any questions for her, and we would just like to ask you for your approval of this variance.
Are there any questions?
Variances,
Any
if you have any
questions, Kara?
questions.
I just had two quick things, Kara. First of all, thank you for including letters of support from the neighbors. I think that really helps our task. And second of all, the term was used by Jason, and I think it may not be clear, just based upon what I heard at the LPA hearing. We throw this term chain link fence around. It sounds like it's going to be a little bit different than that, potentially nicer than a chain link fence, right?
The chain link fence is proposed on the side of the property, correct. It will be a vinyl coated chain link. It is not that, I don't know what that metal is called, but it is not that anodized or whatever that is. It'll be a black vinyl chain link. One of the conditions is that we add some landscaping, and that was the purpose for the request of the chain link. The owner has had chain link in the past, had a very lush landscaped area, and we're looking to replace that. To allow the airflow was just to help that.
Right. Thank you.
Any other questions for Kara?
I just have a question on the conditions for approval. And I don't know if this is just specific to this. I guess this is what I really want to know is that item number 2, if the current principal structure is demolished and a new principal structure built on the property, the variances for this fence will become null and void. Is that something that we just put in for this variance, or Is that something that is a common practice, like for more other structures that are gone?
My understanding, the reason for that is because of the ask for the variances are very tied into the particular home that is in existence on the property. The home was constructed with very little rear yard. In 2018, the owner applied for a pool permit. This fence is accommodating that. So the thought was, the purpose for this is the conditions on this particular piece of property and where that structure is.
All right. Any other questions for Kara? All right,
Thank you.
Are there any members of the public who would wish to comment on this matter? If so, please come forward to the podium and identify yourself, provide your address, and whether you were sworn in. Is there any public comment on this? Seeing none, I'll now close the public hearing and request discussion or a motion from town council to approve with conditions, deny with reasons, or a continuance to a time certain. Discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I would move passage of Resolution 23-123.
I'll second.
We got a motion from Vice Mayor Adderholt, a second by Councilor Veach. Any other discussion? Roll call vote? Is this a roll call vote?
No conditions. Yes.
This is a roll call vote. Councilor King?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Adderholt?
Aye.
Mayor Allers, aye. Councilor Woodson?
Aye.
Councilor Veach?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Congratulations. Our next public hearing is ordinance 23-15, owner build permit. This is the first reading and public hearing, an ordinance of the town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, amending section 6-325, owner builder exception of Division 5, contractor licensing of Article 2, building codes of Chapter 6, maintenance codes, building codes, and coastal regulations of the Code of the Town of Fort Myers Beach to clarify who is eligible for an owner-builder permit, providing for conflicts of law, Scrivener's errors, severability, and an effective date. I'll now open the first public hearing and the schedule for the next, if approved, the schedule for the second reading and final adoption on October 16th, 2023 at 9 a.m. Becky, do you want to?
Yes, this is just changing the current city code to allow a limited number of trusts, which are essentially the equivalent of revocable living trusts, which in those situations, someone owns their property in a trust, but the trust is actually the alter ego of the trust. There are different types of trusts. This only allows these particular types of trusts in which the owner is actually the same person, essentially. It is possible for people who own these types of properties in a trust to qualify for homestead exemption. And this would allow them to pull an owner-builder permit. And they would also be required at all times to follow all the requirements of an owner-builder permit, which means they have to personally supervise and that sort of thing.
Any questions for Becky?
Yeah, Becky, we had a conversation about the language of the modification to this, of you not being a lawyer. To me, it seems to open up more maybe than was intended. And I understand that it's a fairly complex description because there's certain aspects of the trust that make it qualified to do this, but other trusts that don't have those aspects are not, right?
Correct. And the language is actually, and I realize it's tough language to understand if you're not a lawyer, but it is the same language which allows a particular piece of property to qualify for a homestead exemption. So I went back after our discussion and looked at it, and I think that this is language that needs to be in there. And I will tell you that I'm going to be reviewing each one of the trusts before a permit is issued to ensure that it is the proper type of trust.
That's going to be my, so, go ahead, Bill, sorry.
I was just going to, because I was reading through this, and I understand the need to have the description, the possessory right, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
But in the first line, you took out the "or trust," which removes the prohibition of a trust, and then in the additional line, then you add the ability for a certain type of trust. So I'm just wondering if there is, I mean, in my reading that, it seems to me like maybe opening up more than's intended by taking out the "or trust."
I can, if the town council would like me to before the second reading, because it would not change the title to the ordinance, put an additional sentence in there that makes it clear that other types of trusts are not permitted.
I personally support the clarity.
Okay.
I'm completely behind the intent.
Okay?
I just want to make sure that it's clear to people and that we don't create confusion or potentially an opening that we don't want to create.
Okay.
I think that makes sense as well. It'll help clarity and maybe some staff time of reviewing.
Well, I will continue to review them because I think that's important, because it is, I think it takes a lawyer to ensure that it's the proper kind of trust. And it doesn't take me very long to do it.
No, I
I've been
think that's a
doing
great
it for a
idea.
lot of cities for a long time.
Sure.
Although, of course, it's good to communicate with people. So if they do have something that it's clear that it's not allowed, that they're not going to come in and waste their time and
Sure.
your time to review a trust that's not.
Yeah, that's the
not
point I
allowed.
was trying to make.
Yeah.
Okay.
Someone won't go through the application process if it's a little more clear, I think is
Okay.
good.
So, are you ready for a motion, Mayor?
If there's no other discussion,
I just have one question. So I know that this came up because there was so many people that had their properties in a trust. Do we now have a backlog of people that have been denied or were in the process that will be reviewed because of this change? Or
I'm going to review them as they come in.
So I guess maybe our town PIO could let people know that if they have been rejected for this, then once this ordinance passes, they could reapply.
that's kind of the point I was getting at, to let
Okay.
people know if they've been
Sure.
denied or they're in the process and they were told that they, after the second reading, and if it's approved, then they have the chance to come back.
Okay.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I don't want to belabor this, but I want to just thank the new town attorney for her, I guess, thoughtfulness, really, because when this was presented to our previous council, we were told that there was absolutely nothing we could do. It's state law. That's it. End of story. Obviously, there's a nuance here that our town attorney has found that I think will be really helpful to some of our residents, and I just appreciate your efforts on that front. And for those in the public who know of someone who was originally frustrated by this provision and can now get some relief, please help us to spread the word. Thanks.
All right. Counselor King, anything else?
I think it's all been said.
All right. Now, is there a motion to?
I'll make a motion to move ordinance 23-15 to a second reading on a date certain, October 16th, 2023.
At 9 a.m.?
And I will, could you also add to the motion that the town attorney is directed to clarify that other types of trusts are not eligible?
And I would also add to the motion that the attorney will
You can just say,
modify the
"So
language.
moved."
So moved.
Second.
We got a motion by Counselor Veach, seconded by Vice Mayor Adderholt. Any other discussion? This does not have to be a roll call, right? It does? Okay.
Yes, it does.
Counselor Veach,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Adderholt,
Aye.
Counselor Woodson,
Aye.
Counselor King,
Aye.
Mayor Allers, aye. Motion carries unanimously 5-0.
I'll just say, though, I know of several people who have extensive construction experience outside of Florida, and doing an owner-builder in Florida is daunting with the Florida building codes.
Yeah, I
It's
can
not,
tell
it's
you.
not, it's not for the,
What you think you know in other states is much different in Florida, and then you add in a coastal community on top of it, you get an education. That brings us to public hearing, item B, ordinance 23-13, amending the EC zoning / location of construction near beaches. This is the first reading and public hearing, an ordinance of the town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, amending chapter 34, article 3, division 4, section 34-652, environmentally critical EZ zoning district, and chapter 6, article 3, division 2, section 6-366, location of construction near beaches, providing for severability, codification, scrivener's errors, conflicts of law, and an effective date. Now open the first public hearing and schedule, if approved, a second reading and final adoption on October 16, 2023 at 9 a.m. Sarah, before you move on.
Yes.
The last public hearing, did I forget to open that for public comment?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Ooh, if you did, let's go back and open it for public comment. And
I did. That's my fault. Okay.
And see if there's any public comment, and if there is, take a revote.
Is there any public comment that wanted to be made for owner builder permit ordinance 23-15?
Do we also need to do the disclosures about contacts and things like that as well?
No, this is
No.
not quasi judicial.
No,
Okay.
just the public here, the public comment part, I forgot. I don't see any, so do we need to reopen it?
You don't need to take another vote.
Okay. Now we'll try it, Sarah. I won't forget this time.
Good morning, Sarah Probst with Community Development. As some of you may remember, the EC zoning district language was amended in 2020 to reduce and clarify what can be built and repaired within the EC zoning district, which is the land on the seaward side of the 1978 coastal construction control line. In 2020, the town council voted to disallow the repairs of major accessory structures in the EC zoning district. There appear to be about half a dozen pools that extend over the CCCL. Some of these have been damaged and need repairs. One condominium has reached out to the town about repairing its pool that is partially in the EC, and staff has been directed to provide potential language to allow those types of repairs. The language before you is intended to allow the repair of existing major accessory structures which are partially or fully seaward of the CCCL with the approval of a special exception. Included in the language are some ideas for what criteria should be considered for approval of a special exception for repair of structures in the EC. I would like you to consider the proposed language in front of you. This language was recommended from the LPA. This is the first hearing of this ordinance, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
Questions for Sarah?
Yes, Sarah. I know you said repair in your monologue there, but I'm reading this section 3, and it says repair or reconstruction, and it was scratched out redevelopment. Could you clarify those 3 R's and what they mean?
Yes. So originally, it said redevelopment. Staff had a lot of concerns about what redevelopment means. That doesn't seem to be reconstruction or repair. Most of the time, we think of redevelopment as something new happening on an existing lot. So staff removed the word redevelopment because the EC zoning district is not really intended for that. We put in repair because that was the specific request for things that already existed. And then reconstruction is allowed by 6-366B through the plan development zoning process. So we didn't want to remove that. That was brought up by one of the LPA members, that reconstruction is specifically called out as something that can be done through the PD rezoning process. So if somebody wants to go through that process, they can reconstruct something. But we did want to remove that redevelopment because the intent is not to allow new things to be built there.
So the reconstruction, the repair is pretty obvious, right? I mean, something fairly minor, nothing structural, I assume. Now, with reconstruction, would that be something that is structurally compromised, being essentially torn up and rebuilt in the same place?
That is our understanding of how that would be implemented, yes.
Okay. So if someone's going to, if something is over the EC zone and it's not salvageable, then this would provide them a pathway to rebuild it, still encroaching in the EC zone.
So one thing that we could look at, so this language is written as repair or reconstruction of existing primary structures which encroach into the EC district and their customary accessory uses can be rebuilt in accordance with 6-366B of this code. So we may want to, actually, now that you're saying that, we may want to amend that to say 6-366B and clarify through a PD if it's reconstruction and through a special exception if it's repair.
Yeah, I think that's.
I think the question would be, how do we want to define the difference between a repair and a reconstruction? I know that this conversation occurred at the LPA, and it's hard to pin down what is a repair versus what is a reconstruction. Is it structural damage? Is it a certain percentage? It's hard to sort of define the difference between that.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that it's very clear so we all know.
Is it, most of these requests are pools, right? That we're dealing with, maybe a fence here or there.
Yeah. The ones that we have been asked to address are pools and fences and pool decks.
Yeah, I guess it's very hard to pin down, but, repairs tile, if a whole side of a pool collapsed. I guess, could you do it in a way that if you are going to reconstruct exactly what you had, that could be a difference versus we want to reconstruct a pool, but we want to change where it was at. So if it's going to go back in the exact same spot it was, could that be considered a reconstruct versus a rebuild?
Well,
in a pool?
It has to be the difference between a repair and reconstruct. So is it a repair if it's in the same place, but there was structural damage? And
I guess what I'm trying to get at is if someone is just replacing tiles or they're replacing their pool because the concrete was, for whatever reason, but they want to reconstruct the pool, but in the exact location. Obviously, it's a reconstruction, but it's not a repair. Is that a significant enough description versus we want to reconstruct a pool, but we want to change it from facing east to west to north to south? That, you know what I'm trying to say? Does that make sense?
So if they're making a change to the design.
A design change would then no longer be a reconstruct.
I like where you're headed with that, Mr. Mayor. I think that's a good idea.
Or if the change is maybe over 50% of the existing.
And the percentage, someone brought that up in the initial meeting, and percentage is really hard for accessory structures because we don't really appraise the value of accessory structures in the same way that we do for primary structures. So
Gotcha. Okay.
coming up with that might be difficult for us and for the applicant.
Okay.
So how much of an intrusion do these properties have into the EC? Is this like a foot, or is this like larger?
It's more than 1 foot. Then they all differ. There are some that's just a little edge piece sort of sticks out into the EC, and there are others that are almost divided in half. I don't think that there are any that are fully built beyond the CCCL, like they start in the CCCL or in the EC zoning district. But they're all a little bit different, and they all haven't come in just yet.
Yeah. And I understand there's, every one of these situations will probably be different. Some of them are probably pretty trivial repairs, little acid wash of tiles, like the mayor was saying. But then if someone is really having to completely rebuild their pool and it's a minor movement of the pool, that's something we would encourage. I would even think for the property owner, it may have some benefit for the insurance getting out of the EC zone.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that closing the door completely on it, there may be some restrictions, whether it be utilities or something that is preventing them from being able to move a pool if they have to reconstruct it a foot or two, if it's only a foot or two over the CCCL, or 5 feet or whatever. But I think that's the whole point of the PD process, is to work through, is it a design issue? Is it something that why is it that you need to move it or keep it in that location and you can't move it? I think that's the reason that process is in place. But this could give an opportunity for those that want to have a pool. I haven't heard any, but those that maybe did have a pool damage beyond repair to get it back at least in the same location that it was, without having to go through being told no.
So the idea of the PD process means that it would be a case-by-case basis. So someone had a pool that they were reconstructing, they'd have to come in front of council for approval?
That's the way the code is currently written. For reconstruction, they would have to get that land that's currently zoned EC zoned to a PD, which would allow that to be essentially whatever zoning district they want to overlay it. I mean, it's going to be plan development zoning district, CPD, commercial plan development, or an RPD. But then that would allow the uses within that district in what was previously the environmentally critical zoning district.
But even the repair would have to come back through the council process for the special exception, correct?
No. Once the underlying zoning district was changed, that would be allowed by right. It's the instance where somebody does not want to go through the PD zoning process and they want to get a repair, they'd have to go through the special exception process. That land would remain environmentally critically zoned, but they would be allowed to do that individual repair. Anytime in the future they wanted to do any additional repairs, they would have to reapply.
But even though I understand that part, but what I guess I'm asking is if they have to do the repair, they still have to go through the special exception process, which would mean they'd have to go before council.
If they rezone it to a CPD, they wouldn't.
Right, but if someone just wants to replace tiles.
Yes. Only if they're required to have a permit. So some of the repairs don't even require a permit. If they need to clean it and acid wash it and fill it up with water again, they don't necessarily even come to the town. They can do that without a special exception, without even getting a permit. But if it requires an actual permit to do the work, then they have to go through the special exception.
That's a clarification that I wanted to
Yes.
get out there.
Yeah. So if it's like a very basic, we've had some condominiums contact us and say, we're not doing, we don't really have to do anything. Do we have to go through this process? And if they just have to clean out their pool and repaint it, no, they don't have to go through that process because that's not a permit required by the town.
Okay. That's good clarification. Any other questions for Sarah?
Just one more thing. So it's kind of interesting that the PD supersedes this EC zone, which I thought was placed by the state.
The EC zoning district is not placed by the state. That was something that the town applied. The CCCL exists. That's something that I believe was created by the state, but I don't know what state requirements are specifically implemented beyond that zone. But the EC zoning district has special criteria that the town placed.
And are there any, of any examples where there's a condo or some habitable structure that is seaward of the triple CL?
I believe that there are a few that may kind of inch over that edge. There are not many that are substantially beyond it. And I'm also not aware of any instances where a PD has been extended into the EC zoning district.
So for them, that would be, they would have the same recourse. If their condo is extending a few feet into the EC, they can come in and do a PD.
Well, if they only have to repair, which in most instances they'll only need repairs, so they would need to get a special exception for that.
Right, but they do a PD, they do it once. If they do a repair, then every time they need a repair,
yes,
they'd have to come in front of.
However, the PD requirements are much more stringent. In addition to there being a longer process, you have to prove scientifically that the location of the CCCL is not appropriate any longer. So there's engineering involved. There's a lot more to it. In the instance where you just need to say, fix some windows and, the roof that extends beyond the CCCL, that can be done through the special exception process and may be simpler. In instances where you may need to repeatedly make this change, or if there are multiple things that are beyond that CCCL, that might make more sense to do a PD.
Okay, so then I'm reading this thinking that this allows people a path.
Yes.
Multiple paths, right? If they have to repair it, it's a no-brainer. If they have more significant work, they can choose the option they want, but it's still within the council's purview to approve it or not approve it.
So I think that something that may make sense is making sure that we have clear definitions of repair and reconstruct. I need to go back into the code and see. I feel like it's rather vague if it's in there, and I don't recall off the top of my head. If we do not have that language, do you have a preference on how that should be based?
Well, I think based on what you said, a repair could be something that doesn't require a permit, other than maybe tile. I mean, it's kind of like
Most
the
of
percentage thing.
Most of the pools that are coming in here will require a permit.
Permit, right.
They do have a need for new shells, the
Right.
shell that you put into the pool. So they are major repairs that need to be made. I don't know if they rise to the level of reconstruct. And percentage is very tricky in this instance.
Yeah, I think that, repair, I guess, trying to define some of these words, to me, I think that reconstruction probably would be if there's something really structurally wrong. I mean, if you can't put a dollar or percentage on it easily, then maybe something that has any kind of structural element would then be a reconstruct. You're looking towards
Yes.
Jason?
No, Steve.
Steve?
Yes, please. Thank you.
And so in case you weren't following, Steve, we're trying to define repair and reconstruction. In what case would it?
I apologize. I should have thought that far along.
Morning, Steve Poposky, Community Development Director, Building Official. Probably the best way is to read out of the Florida Building Code, existing building code. Repair is defined as the reconstruction or renewal of any part of an existing building for the purpose of its maintenance or to correct damage. Everything else is an alteration that's not either that.
I think that seems very clear and forward. I mean, you have to follow that anyway.
True.
Can't we just adopt that into our code, that wording? It seems pretty clear to me.
I think that, well, it's kind of funny that repair, the definition of repair included reconstruction.
Well, yeah, I guess technically tile work is reconstruction, but.
Right. In many cases, tile work by itself wouldn't require a permit. It's just when you're dealing with a pool and the surfaces around a pool, sometimes it does. Because there's regulations for a pool that maybe don't exist in a kitchen or a bathroom or a shower.
Well, I think we know, one bar we know is that if it doesn't require a permit, then it's not an issue.
Right.
But I would like to, support people who just want to need tile or something superficial to not have to go through all of these hoops.
Right. And I think, and I don't want to speak for anyone else, but so I'll speak for myself. I think the focus and the point that we're trying to get is we need to leave some of these decisions up to the staff. That we understand what you just said, Steve, but there could be some gray in there. I mean, there has to be some common sense applied to some of these things, or it's not just, I don't want to make the decision, let's send it to council and let them make the decision. I think between management and staff, you guys can figure out some of these and what constitutes a repair and what constitutes a reconstruct. It's not difficult to figure out. I don't think if you're just dropping a new liner in a pool, that you're not building something new, you're just dropping a liner in. But if I'm bulldozing it out, obviously that's a whole different scenario. So I'm confident in letting you guys interpret the code through staff and through management to be able to determine if it's too sticky and between all the people in that building can't come to a consensus, then it should come before council. But we're really focused on making sure these people can get back into their houses as soon as they can and use some of the things that they've paid a lot of money for without doing anything that we're not supposed to be doing, obviously.
And I also think that whenever somebody applies for a special exception, if it comes to you and you look at it and you say, this is way more than a repair, this is a reconstruction, at that point, you can say, no, this is not appropriate, this is more appropriate to go to
Sure.
the PD process. So that can also be your call if we have passed it along as a special exception, and then it comes to you and you say, no, that's too much. So there's always that backstop.
Sure.
I mean, certainly not the preferable way to move it forward, but it would be an option.
And I think that anybody who gets, if they do apply through the town and you're not comfortable and you turn them down, then it does go to council anyway. And to me, kind of the fine line to me is really structural. That if it's not structural, it should be an easier path than if they really need to tear something out.
Yeah, I guess my point was kind of, and I'll ask Steve this, technically a liner for a pool could be considered structural. And I guess that's where we have to use some latitude and let the people apply some common sense to what truly is structural. You're not putting in new footings, you're not changing the design of the pool. You're literally just replacing, like refinishing a bathtub. It's the same thing, just putting a new shine on it. Any other questions for staff? Thank you. Do you think you have enough direction to move forward to the next? Okay. Is there a motion to?
Public comment?
Oh, thanks for covering me there. Public comment. Saved me again. Is there anyone that'd like to speak publicly on ordinance 23-13, amending the EC zoning location or construct near beaches? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Any further discussion? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to move ordinance 23-13 to the second reading on a date certain, October 16th, with the suggestions made to staff by council.
We got a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Counselor Veach, seconded by Counselor Woodson. All those in favor? Oh, we got a roll call. Counselor Veach?
Aye.
Counselor Woodson?
Aye.
Mayor Allers, aye. Vice Mayor Adderholt?
Aye.
Counselor King?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Our final public hearing is ordinance 23-14, administrative setback variances. This is the first reading and public hearing and ordinance of the town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, amending Chapter 34, Article 2, Division 6, Section 34-268, administrative setback variances, providing for severability, codification, scrivener's errors, conflicts of law, and an effective date. We'll now open the first public hearing, and if approved, schedule a second reading and final adoption on October 16th, 2023 at 9 a.m.
Good morning, Sarah Probst with Community Development. Several months ago, Town Council adopted language that would allow certain administrative variances. The focus of that ordinance was primarily on cottage lots. Since that time, staff has recognized an error in the language that requires all administrative variances to meet the criteria that homes applying for administrative variances can only be for the square footage that was previously constructed and may only be a single story. That specific criteria was intended to apply for administrative variances for the cottage lots. The language before you clarifies that the square footage and single story are only applicable to the request for administrative variance to rebuild a cottage on a non-conforming lot. The changes before you were recommended by LPA for approval. There will be one more hearing after this hearing for approval of the code amendment, and I am available for any questions you may have.
Questions for Sarah? We'll wait till. Can you go into a little bit more detail on that? You said the LPA did not discuss language A1A that does not allow administrative variances if there is a proposed height increase in your staff report.
I did not print off my staff report. I apologize. What does it say?
It says the LPA did not discuss the language in A1A that does not allow administrative variances if there is a proposed height increase. We were waiting for you to come back to see if there were any questions you
Staff
had.
members, does it take to do this?
Yeah, right.
We were.
Can you screen a light bulb?
Yeah, we went through it. She made her presentation. Now we're just waiting. Oh, she did?
I apologize. I was just explaining that that was not applicable in this instance.
Okay. I just wanted to get clarity because I was confused.
Yeah, I had to read through the attachments, so I apologize.
Okay.
And so the basis of your edits here is just to qualify B3 that it only obtains, or it only pertains to non-conforming lots.
Yes. Yeah, because the way we had put it together, we were focused on those non-conforming cottage lots at that time and didn't think about how all of the criteria would apply to that. And all the other criteria doesn't really match with that specific administrative variance request.
Any other questions for Sarah? Is there a motion? Oh, sorry. Public comment. God. They say you can't train a new dog. Old dog, new tricks. Any public comment on ordinance 23-14 administrative setback variances? Yes, sir.
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, Town Attorney, staff. John McLean, 237 Egret Street. I think I just wanted to commend the town staff for working to correct an oversight in the ordinances that don't allow existing buildings to be elevated without these increased restrictions. We've been very helpful in working through this, and in personal experience, we're not looking to do anything but move our existing house up. We're not adding an additional floor. We're not looking to do anything like that, existing footprint. So the way it's currently written, there's restrictions that just don't make sense. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any other questions or any comments? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Bring it back to council. Any further discussion? Is there a motion for ordinance 23-14?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance to move ordinance 23-14 to the second reading on a date certain of October 16th.
We got a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Got a motion by Councilor Veach, seconded by Vice Mayor Adderholt. Councilor Veach? How do you vote?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Adderholt?
Aye.
Councilor Woodson?
Aye.
Mayor Allers, aye. Councilor King?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next is our administrative agenda. Item A is Resolution 23-122, Mooring Field Systems Purchase, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, approving a sole source purchase agreement between the town and America Underwater Contractors, Inc. for the sole source purchase of 70 mooring systems for a cost of $194,410. Andy, Frankie?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. Chad Schutz is here to present.
Hey, morning, everyone. Chad Schutz, Town of Fort Myers Beach environmental staff. So this would be for the 70 balls that are east of the Matanzas Pass Bridge. Those have been damaged and need to be replaced in their entirety. This company is that we've sole sourced is the only one who makes these. If we were going to try and buy the same ones, they'd basically just be a distributor of this same company. Any questions?
Can you go into the funding part of it, the financial impact? That's it's in our packet, but just so everyone's aware.
Sure. These are infrastructure assets of the town that were destroyed during Hurricane Ian, and I've been advised by Tidal Basin that they will be reimbursable by FEMA. I'm not sure if anything's changed on the cost share of things, but FEMA, from what I understand, is paying 90% of the cost. FDM would be paying 5%, and I believe this time we're also going to be paying 5%
Currently.
Of that cost.
Which would be, what, $9,720.50 would be the actual cost to the town when it's all
Yes,
said and
sir.
done. Okay. Any other questions for Chad?
Does doing a sole source purchase give us any issues with FEMA reimbursement?
Not as long as it follows our procurement process.
Good. Any other questions for Chad? Thanks, Chad.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion for Resolution 23-122? Is there a motion for Resolution 23-122?
So moved.
Got a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Counselor Veach, seconded by Counselor King. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Next is Resolution 23-124, Stewart Materials, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, approving a sole source purchase agreement between the town and Stewart Materials for the sole source purchase of 26,460 tons of beach-compatible sand for a cost of $313,551. Andy?
Mayor, Chad will present this one as well.
Hey, good morning again. So, yeah, beach compatible sand to restore our more frequented accesses, as well as to install a berm on the 7,000 block along a portion of the beach that did not qualify for the FEMA berm, but is still experiencing flooding from king tides and storm surge.
Just for folks who are watching, what are those residential properties at that did you say 7,000 block?
Yes, sir.
But is it primarily residential properties?
Primarily. There may be Sun Caper, Castle, sorry.
7,000 would be Island Reef, wouldn't it?
On the higher end of the 7,000 block.
Just looking at, I know their address is 7,000 Estero.
Yep. So we have a FEMA berm there. So it starts around Sun Caper. So Sun Caper to Mr. Marty's is covered, and then from Mr. Marty's to Carlos Point is the gap in the FEMA berm. So it is 7,000 and partially the 8,000, correct.
Chad, can you explain, the question's been asked a lot, what's the difference between a FEMA berm and what this is?
Just who's paying for it. So the state is paying for this one. We got the better part of $1.9 million from the state to restore our beach and do sand projects to help protect upland properties.
So Chad, would this be sand that was normally going to go to that area but was prevented by the nesting birds? Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And so this would also Leonardo, the area, the condos south and north of Leonardo Arms, would they be covered as well by this?
No, sir. So everything that qualify for the FEMA berm, we're still going to be using FEMA dollars to install that FEMA berm.
And the birds are done nesting, so that's going on right now?
Yes, sir. So we are still in talks. We've applied to the state and to FEMA to get a little bit more sand. There's several factors that led to a shortfall in sand to construct that FEMA berm. So we are going back to FDM and FEMA to make up for that difference. So those portions that did qualify for the FEMA berm will still be receiving that. And this is the same type of project. It's just paid for by dollars from FDEP from the state.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And could you also just take a minute to explain how this berm and the beach renourishment coming up, is there some redundancy there? How do they interact?
That's primarily why we chose this area, because it's outside of any project areas. If we didn't use it, this sand for this area, I'm not sure, it'd be difficult to get funding for a berm over there because it's outside of our renourishment area. It's not designated as critically eroded. It didn't qualify for the FEMA berm, so having these discretionary dollars from the state is what allows us to put sand there, which we'd otherwise have a difficult time getting funding for that.
Okay.
And this grant that you mentioned is outside of the one that was just issued today?
I'm not up to the news, I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's for beach renourishment.
Beach renourishment, so that's,
The $8 million.
this grant is separate from the $8 million that was
Yes,
granted
sir.
today? Okay.
Absolutely.
Just glad we could catch you up.
Yeah, catch up, indeed.
Any other questions to Chad? Hearing none. Thank you, Chad.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
I'll move to approve Resolution 23-124, Stewart Materials.
We got a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Counselor King, seconded by Counselor Veach. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Next is final public comment. Madam Clerk? Is there anyone that would like to speak at final public comment? Yes, ma'am.
Got to bring it down. Good morning. Thank you, Counselor, Vice Mayor, Mayor. My name is Becky Weber. I live on Curlew Street. And my comment is on behalf of Let's Go Fort Myers Beach. And I would like to ask that we're going to proceed with the recommendation of the council to get more detailed financial information. But we would like to ask that the council discuss when we could take this, or if approved by council, to Lee County. We're obviously trying to leapfrog as much as we can to get this to Lee County because we're concerned with the funding. And funding is going to start being handed out, and we want to make sure we're at that table. So that's my request, that we can get an okay to move forward from council, or for council to move forward, that this is from the town with the peer information. Yeah, peer request.
I guess we'll proceed out of order here. I know we don't do this, but this is, as you said earlier, it's an important thing that I think it's important that you also work with our staff as to, I know those were rough renderings there of kind of, but work with staff to find out setbacks, because I know when it eventually does go before the county, they're going to ask those questions of how does this work within the town's zoning district and setbacks and heights and all of those kind of things. So the more detail you can have when it's presented to the county, I think will be beneficial to all of us.
What we plan to do is the company that had been very gracious and done some renderings for us for nothing, we're going to ask them if they can get involved, and then we'll ask them for, a quote for it, because some of this is outside our purview of expertise, to put it mildly. So we'd involve the staff as well in it, so that we could have that information for the county as well.
And I certainly don't think it would hurt to, if you get a quote for it, to reach out to the county for those design services to see if they'd be willing to use some of the money that they're receiving through their PA projects to fund that design part of it, since it is their asset. But it can't hurt to ask.
Absolutely, since all the funds we've used so far are out of our own pockets. So that would be a little bit more than we could handle.
Sure, understood. Thank you. Anyone else have public comment? Hearing none, we'll close public comment. Town manager items.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Town Manager, just while we're on this subject, could you give them, since they're here, some direction? Because it sounds like we want them to move forward. They're going to need some help. These, the Let's Go FMB. Huh?
Yeah, the pier.
Yeah, on the pier. Just since they're right here, just.
I think it comes from you, not me.
Well, no, but when I say
'cause
direction.
it's a bigger
Yeah.
project than just them going there. We've got to coordinate. We've got to be involved with the county as well.
Yep.
There's a lot of moving parts. I'm really not sure what you're asking for me to give them direction to do what.
Yeah. I don't want to put words in your, or Karen, or you.
Well, that was actually going to come up on my council members'
Okay,
agenda, like how
let's
are the
bring it
next
up under
steps?
that, then. Let's get through his, and then if you have it on your.
I do.
We'll circle back.
Thank you.
We're
I'm
not
sorry,
bouncing
Vice
all over.
Mayor. Yep, but that is kind of part of what I'm about to talk about, because I'm making some staff changes. We will continue to make some staff changes probably during the month of October in a couple areas, but the number one change that I want to talk about today is that I've promoted Steve Poposky to be our town engineer. The reason being is for things like what we're talking about is the pier project and the new town hall and Bay Oaks project and utilities and stormwater and things like that. And we kind of had them farmed out a little bit to staff, and now it's going to be coming under one umbrella. Now you ask what's going to happen next. Well, I'm working with a group to bring them in-house to do our permitting, to do our inspections, to do our plan reviews, and possibly an additional in-house planner. So there's a lot of moving parts that hopefully this week I will have some answers, and we'll be able to come back hopefully by Thursday, and talk about it at M&P, but for sure at the next council meeting. So there are a lot of moving parts going on. As we speak, today or yesterday, I actually started my 6th month, and so it actually feels like 6 years. I kid you not. There's so many things going on. We've done more, and I've experienced and been exposed to more in 5 months than you typically would in a 5 or 6 year period, strictly because of the volume, obviously, and so much. And it's really been great to have the staff to lean on, and we spoke a little bit, you guys spoke a little bit earlier about our staff, and I spoke to them the other day, and this can't be done with just the 6 of us, the 7 of us. It takes the whole team to get these things accomplished. You don't get trees planted, you don't get clocks installed, the electrical done without staff. And I'd be remiss if I didn't focus on their contribution to the successes we've had so far. And as I tweak and we move and I coordinate and facilitate how I want the staff to be and what we want to be going forward, I think we're building a better mousetrap, if that's a good term to use. And I think we've got a unique opportunity to continue to raise the level of where we are going to end up. But we've got to set that groundwork now. It's been a year, I realize that, but the last 5 months, it's been a good lesson for me, and it's been a good case study on how to rebuild a town, how to start almost from scratch. But that's not true. The group I'm bringing in-house, again, they will be in-house. It's a local group. I don't want to give too many details until I get the contract signed and get them fully in place, but I anticipate getting that accomplished this week. Becky and I are meeting with the primary tomorrow to get that hammered out. And as we've had discussions individually, you understand where we're going. One thing we're going to do as part of this, and it probably will coincide now, the more I think about it, with the new town hall, when the temporary new town hall, when we get in there, we're going to extend our hours for our public to more than 8 hours a day, to 10 hours a day, and we're going to adjust some staff members on a voluntary basis to some 4 10-hour days. That helps them to have that extra day off, but we will have 5 days of coverage. The 10S would be 5 10-hour days of coverage. Weekends, that's always a possibility. We do have staff that works weekends, so we do have some weekend coverage. Not like the appraiser's office apparently, but that's a pretty high bar to measure up against. But there's always options, So I am looking at everything. The other thing, I'll save it for last. But one thing I want Frankie to talk about, he put him in charge of base and in code enforcement, and one thing we're doing is we're trying to be a little more friendly, if that's the right word, but we're switching that area, the name, instead of code compliance or enforcement and base, they're going to be neighborhood services. So I want Frankie to talk a little bit about how
Andy, before you yield to Frankie, you and I know you do this by design because you don't want to get granular until you sign the contract, but just you've teased it out enough. Just is it fair to say, in a general sense, that you're working on a new sort of paradigm shift that will infuse significant new resources into our permitting process? Is that fair characterization?
Correct, and probably at like with the move for Steve, that there's no effect to the budget. It's a seamless, and he's also now responsible for utilities because there's such a big project with our stormwater and our underground utilities and things like that. That yes, this should be seamless. It should be cost effective, and we're just going to even bring them in, and we're going to reevaluate the whole process, everything from application, from the website to final approvals, and get a whole paradigm shift, as you called it. Whatever it takes, we're going to make sure that we is it a little late to the game? I'm sure we're going to get those naysayers. Why do you do this 6 months ago or a year ago or whatever? Well, sometimes you just have to wade through the muck to get to the good water. So.
I appreciate that. I just think it's important for the residents to know that help is on the way, and
that is correct.
It's imminent.
That is correct.
And it's good news. I just want to. You're very modest sometimes, but this is a big deal for the town.
Carrying on what Andy had suggested about the neighborhood services, Just to let you know, we've been taking, again, my name is Frankie Kropacek. I'm the Operations and Compliance Director for the town of Fort Myers Beach. But to expound on what Andy had said about neighborhood services, what we've done is looked at how we can incorporate more eyes and ears on the road. So by developing a 4-zone area for what was formerly known as BASE, now Neighborhood Services, they're going to be going from the beach to the bay. They're going to be in the community. They're going to be looking for not only things that just don't look right. They're going to be looking for people putting illegal signage on our street signs. They're going to be looking for those.
That's not something you want in paradise.
That is correct. But we will be dropping those off at a residence on Tropical Shores later. Also, we're going to be looking for things that can impact the community. If we see people that need help, these are the opportunities to really get out and do what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be ambassadors to the town. So by being on the beach, they're going to have equipment with them to facilitate trash pickup. When they're in the back, going towards the back bay in the community streets, looking if a resident needs help, a resident needs information. All these things are going to be available to the town moving forward. We're getting away from that paradigm of just hawking the parking lots, looking for that parking fee, whether it be on the beach accesses or downtown. That has stopped completely. Not saying that we're not collecting fees, we are, but we're doing it in the proper way, the way that it should have been done from the get-go. And we're going to be looking into new signage downtown. We're going to be looking to working with events that come downtown, where people can be more accessible to having a great time and not having to worry about being impacted by coming back and seeing a ticket on their window. So little things like this, we're going to, as the whole system gets developed, it's going to change a little bit as we go forward. This is kind of in its infancy stages now. We have a totally different management team behind this, driven by Chad Schutz, our environmental manager. He's going to kind of oversee not only code enforcement, but also the neighborhood services and the beach operations team. And so a little by little, we're trying to correct probably a wrong that should have been corrected a long time ago.
So if I could, Frankie, because I've talked with you about this, and I'm sure you've talked to my colleagues, another significant paradigm shift, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but based upon our conversations, it sounds like the new paradigm for the town, a paradigm that some of us have been waiting for a long time, is going to shift from fining first to education to gain compliance, and then last resort fine. So in other words, education to bring people into compliance, maybe a warning to get them into compliance, and then last resort fine. And again, it's a cooperative dynamic with our residents as opposed to a punitive kind of relationship. Is that a fair characterization of what you're trying to achieve?
Yes, Mr. Vice Mayor, it is exactly what we're looking to. You've heard me say it many times. It's educate, educate, educate. We're going to take every opportunity we can to get people to understand the need to comply. Finding somebody is, for lack of a better word, an act of cowardness, because you do not take the ability that you have and the obligation you have to educate the people on how they have to comply. So that's the main thrust behind this, is to give the people all the information they need to become compliant. If that's the case, we're going to have a great town.
That just gave goosebumps on my arms. Thank you for that, Frankie. I appreciate that very much. Yeah.
Even with the jacket?
Even with the sweater, yeah.
You know, Vice Mayor Adderhold uses the paradigm shift. I call it a culture change.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
Same thing.
Yep. Sure is. The last thing, if I may, I've had some people approach me about making a contribution, and I've agreed. We're going to have a New Year's Eve night fireworks display. There'll be no charge to the town except for some staff, that type of thing. So just want your blessing to keep moving forward with getting all that accomplished and continue to make the plans, working through Jeff, and get that accomplished. And we'll bring more to you as we move forward. But I think everybody's going to be pretty excited about what they're going to see.
Yeah. You certainly have my support.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Consent.
There you go.
That's all I have.
All right. Town attorney items?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay. Council member items and reports. Councilor King.
Nothing.
Vice Mayor Adderholt. Bahia Via.
I just had a text with some pictures from a constituent regarding Bahia Via Road. And I know you guys have been watching, but just again with the rain and the damage to that road, could you just give an update? Because that's getting pretty serious in terms of not just the flooding, but the state of the road for our residents.
Well, the road is definitely going to be repaired. That was one of the, again, Frankie Kropacek, Operations and Compliance Director. The road is going to get taken care of as soon as we can figure out the best source of, we've got the new Tier 1 system that's going to be going into effect here shortly. And where that falls as far as getting that done. We also have the potential for doing outfalls, collaboratory type effort with the county on all the outfalls going off of Estero that is in the works. We're going to be looking at a lot of the outfalls and seeing if we can clean off some of those areas. In that particular area, I know we were running a pump right after Adalia to get the water off the road. We will have somebody out there today to assess and to act as early as tomorrow as far as getting at least a temporary solution as we move forward, at least through the remainder of the rainy season.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Yes.
That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
And by the way, some of the $5 million we just received goes for road repair and things like that as well. So now we've got an influx of money that just came in that can speed some of this.
And I appreciate that, Mr. Town Manager. I did notice that there's also significant state infusion of money for beach renourishment. And again, if that money is to supplant what the TDC has already committed to do to Fort Myers Beach, I just hope we can work with the TDC to capture those revenues and not lose them, because those were committed to Fort Myers Beach, and that seems like a great way to start the funding for the pier. It's food for thought.
Very much. Is that it?
Yes, thank you.
Councilor Woodson?
Just a couple of things. Two things on Let's Go FMB. How do you feel to proceed with Lee County? I know you made some suggestions to them, which obviously they're taking to heart. I know that, the people that were in the audience at the Let's Go FMB, they're kind of waiting on us for that next step, and I don't know if you want to take that next step with Lee County or how you want to proceed with that, or is it Andy, or who might it be?
Well, you're the liaison, so I think if
Yep.
anything that goes through the county should, at least in my opinion, go through you. If you're, I'll certainly help, or we'll help any way that we can, but I guess my only points were that the county is very detail-oriented, and there's facts-driven, and that's what they react to. So I think the more loaded you can be with facts and figures, and I said, like I said, this weekend, I had a couple people come up that were interested in potentially doing a public-private partnership with getting the pier moving along faster, using their services to help. I think reaching out to them would be important.
So I need to get that from you.
Yeah, and I think the town manager has
Andy's
that
got it?
information,
Okay.
so you can talk to him and he can share that information. And I would have a conversation with them. I would just hate that it goes to the county too fast.
Right.
And if we cross all our Ts and dot all our Is before we go up there, I think we could have a fighting chance, because 38 million is just a big number, especially with all the things that they're working with and we're working with. And, their design is not, I've heard good things and I've heard bad things, and it's just an initial drawing. But the concept kind of goes along with the initial brief meetings that we've had with the county about elevating that whole Times Square area to be able to create a seamless walkable area. It's just a matter of getting the members, the business owners on board with that.
And I think that kind of brings up a kind of an issue I have too. I really appreciate the enthusiasm and the effort that Let's Go FMB is putting in, but they're not an advisory committee. And I don't quite understand, where this gray area fits, because we have advisory committees where people are appointed, they're subject to background checks and sunshine law, and then we have another committee which is not. And I kind of feel like if we're going to go to the county, then it should be the town that goes to the county through something, through town council, to have that authority of saying we're speaking for the town. Let's Go FMB is just it's a citizens group. So for Becky, I'm really not sure about if Let's Go FMB is operating as an advisory committee without being an official committee, then it's kind of like, why have advisory committees at all?
Okay, that is quite problematic. If in fact they are an advisory committee or a committee at all of the town, then, and I see a head shake no, and which is fine, then they're not covered, under the Sunshine Law or anything else. But if they become a part of the town and speak for the town, then they will need to become, an official committee, and they'll be subject to the Sunshine Law. They'll need to have meetings that are posted. They'll need to be open to the public. They'll need to have minutes of their meetings, all the things that governmental bodies need to do. So kind of the twain shall not meet. They, it's got to be one or the other. They can't be kind of in between.
So Becky, could, as a community group, can they provide recommendation, as they did today,
Oh,
to
certainly.
the council, and then a council member could then bring it to, if the council
Oh,
approves
certainly.
with it, to bring it forth that way, so it's not
Certainly.
creating another committee, it's
Absolutely.
either
You
the
just,
council's on
you
board.
just need to be able to, with a straight face, and I think you can absolutely say, no, it is not part of the city. It's a group of citizens who are, bringing forth ideas to the town, and there's nothing at all wrong with the town adopting those ideas or not.
Okay.
And that's pretty much the way I had explained it to Commissioner Sandelli, and said that, the group would be bringing it to the town council for approval of next steps, which I think is what we got with me working with Andy, and what the next steps are, and the council providing input of what else we still need.
Yeah, I would just add that certainly, at least from my perspective, what we approved today would be to allow Councilor Woodson then to go to the county in conjunction with Let's Go FMB, and she could make the introduction and then yield to Alan as a subject matter expert, and maybe the town manager's there as well, or who his designee, and we do the presentation. I liked your idea, Mr. Mayor, of presenting before the TDC as well. I think having a citizen group, they're all citizens or residents of Fort Myers Beach, but they're also voters in Lee County, and they have every right to petition their government at Lee County level. But I think they obviously have a willingness and a desire to partnership with the town, and with Councilor Woodson's involvement, it seems like we've got a synergy there. Obviously, we want to bring staff involved, but I think what Councilor Woodson and Let's Go FMB are looking for is just the consent of the town to let them move forward. And I'm certainly comfortable with that.
Yeah, I would think that, with the suggestions of some of the numbers and the facts that you want to get together, if it were me, I would think the best course of action would be to go through the TDC first, because it was referenced in their TDC funding, which I know a lot of their numbers probably came from the TDC reports. So going before them, at every meeting, they have a point where a town or even anybody can go up during public comment and kind of give a presentation or give some thought. So that would be my suggestion, is to go to the TDC. There are a lot of people there that, well, obviously there's a commissioner there that chairs that committee as well, because they are the advisory committee, and to get them on board, I think, with recommendations could help, I think, what we're trying to do here.
I would also think that, it's important because it's a citizens group, and I know they've been working very hard and putting money into it, but to give them, if they're going in front of the county, even with Karen, to give them the gravitas, of having, either the town behind them or the public, and maybe, it's already a pretty broad group, and I have subcommittees of all kinds of different things. But if there's a way maybe to present options to the public, to get the public buy-in to it, to add more gravitas to it. And, I'm still kind of confused about, it's like, what's the advantage of being a bona fide advisory committee? I don't quite know. Except you have a place on the agenda where you can come in and talk. That's about all I can really think.
Well, there is a huge difference, because the law requires advisory board meetings to be open to the public.
Right.
And probably theirs are, but they have to be posted as to when the meetings are. There have to be, there's not a requirement for an agenda, but typically you do have one, but there is a requirement for minutes. One thing which is probably the biggest issue that I see is they're subject to the Sunshine Law if they become an arm of the town.
And
So they can't go out to dinner together and talk about the pier.
And I understand the technical differences, and I understand that it's more kind of restrictive and open being on a sanctioned advisory
Absolutely.
committee, but I'm trying to figure out what the advantage of going through all that is, because obviously with the group now, they're free to openly discuss all kinds of things outside of Sunshine. And our advisory committees are not. So to me, I'm just trying to figure out, being a part of an advisory committee, how is that better than just coming up with your own group of people and doing it outside the town? Is there any advantage at all to being an advisory committee as opposed to being a
Well, you're part of the town. You're a legitimate part of the town.
so there's more gravitas?
Yes.
Well, I think part of our challenge is that particularly with the subcommittee for the pier, it doesn't naturally fall under the jurisdiction of one of the advisory committees. So it's really a unique subject matter in and of itself. And I think that's hence the citizen activism that's been created. So I think we're getting caught up in minutia here that it seems like the broader objective, we've got a plan. I think even the folks that have presented the plan say it's not going to be the final design, because obviously it's got to go through a process with architects in Lee County and everybody else's input. But boy, just to keep things moving, we've got a very professional presentation. We've got a town councilor who will accompany them. We've got town staff who will work with them. I appreciate the mayor's suggestions of additional detail, but again, the name of the group says, let's go FMB, and let's go. I mean, it seems like that's that we can move, right? I mean,
Well, of course, and everything has its process. The government. One idea maybe Let's Go FMB could also present to BORCAB and get a discussion with them, because BORCAB has kind of become the everything else committee, including beach accesses and all this, and try to just I know they've already had some to bring things more into the public so that it's been publicly vetted more.
I think I see where I'm not opposed to having them make their presentation when they do this little bit more research to BORCAB, then that could be the official recommendation to the council through the committee.
Yeah, it provides that link in.
If that's, I'm not opposed to that. If that's legally, if that's the best way to go, then they are an actual bona fide, I guess you want to say, committee that can advise the town that we think this is great, let's support it. Councilor Woodson can then take it from there.
Well, that actually works because I'm also the liaison on BORCAB.
There you go.
Hey, look at that.
There you go.
Okay, I just want to make sure that the record is clear. We're not saying that Let's Go FMB is going to be a town committee.
Correct.
No. Correct.
Okay, because once that happens, that's a game changer.
No, but they could
So-
they could make the plea through BORCAB, correct? Because
Oh, yeah,
BORCAB
they could-
is.
Sure.
Right.
Anybody could.
Right, they could be their
And
teammate.
in what I heard, they were talking an awful lot about doing things on Lee County property. They could just as easily, work with Lee County on this, although, it's located in the town, so it certainly makes sense, but they're going to need the support of Lee County too. So having it not be a committee of the town, I think makes a lot of sense because they're talking about using county property.
And I don't know if there's a similar, if there's a committee that would be appropriate within the county that maybe they could present to.
Well, I'll just tell you, just maybe to hopefully put an end, or wrap this up, is the county has said multiple times to us, what is it that the town wants? And I think that if we can go to them through BORCAB, from the recommendations from Let's Go FMB, the official approval to send to council, then we can go that route so that they have a clear understanding of what it is that the town of Fort Myers Beach wants through its residents and through the council. Then we've provided them exactly what they've asked for. They're asking what we want. This is what the community wants, and now it's in their hands to work with the town to bring it to fruition or not.
I guess, not to belabor this, but we just added an extra step. The citizen group came to the council, presented, we all accepted and embraced, again, maybe with some nuances, but we've certainly embraced the thrust of what they're doing. Why would we then kick it back to another advisory committee? As much as I love BORCAB, why would we just blessed it? So why create this additional step? I guess I'm confused.
I don't know if I would really necessarily concur that it's been blessed. I think they presented an idea, and they've worked through a lot of different options, and they presented their findings. But I think it really it's if they were to go through to the county, they're basically a citizens group that doesn't wanting to build something on land that they don't control. And I know that the county is like, for months. Months ago I talked to Ray about, we just need to coordinate what the county wants to do with the park and what we want to do with Times Square. But I don't think anything there's that much that has evolved since then.
Yeah, I think the difference is that this group is working in conjunction with one of our town councilors who we've supported the appointment of. So I think, I guess I'm struggling to find out why we're creating an additional step. It'd be different if they were on their own, but they're partnering with one of our town councilors. They're here today. They've done their presentation. They've done their due diligence. And again, this isn't the final design. This is just to get the county moving. Because Ray Sindelli, he said to me 100 times, he said, whenever I come to him with an issue with the county, he says, give us some direction as to what the town would like. Give us at least some direction. We've got some pretty good direction today. Again, it'll be nuanced and changed throughout the process, but we've got some direction. So anyways, I'm sorry. Yeah, keep going.
Well, I also think the only thing that's really been blessed, if you will, through Vice Mayor Adeholt, our mayor, myself, John, is the moving forward of this next step and working with our town manager. And as you said, start with TDC first. I mean, that's what's been blessed, not the design, not the structure, not where it goes, anything like that. It's just moving forward with the ideas.
And I think to your point, Vice Mayor, to me, it's just this idea of giving this committee a little more gravitas and legitimacy by being attached to an actual town committee. I think to me that's an important step. I understand kind of the motivations of the Let's Go FMB group, but I think it's important, particularly at the early stages, is to get as many of our ducks in a row as we can before we go to the county and start giving them grand plans that are going to cost them a lot of money.
I can understand where the vice mayor is coming from on this, because I think we saw it with the fight for the school. It was just a bunch of parents that got up first and went forward, and then the town supported them, and I think they had a lot of weight. And maybe I'm old-fashioned and old school, but I think a group of citizens that are rallying around something like this and wanting to move forward carries a heck of a lot of weight.
I think the school analogy, Councilor King, is an excellent one.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, we've got a whole bunch here to wrap up into a bow.
Could I say something?
Yes, please.
Okay, I am concerned with the idea of possibly merging, in at least some people's mind, Let's Go FMB with a an existing town committee, because then what is it? Because they're totally different rules. They need to be separate. They really do. Because what you don't want is to taint this at all with any kind of sunshine issues. And I'm really getting concerned about talking about, hooking it up with a group to give it more, oomph or whatever, because you can't really hook up something like that.
Becky, would you think try to summarize it the best I can, do you think it's the best course of action for the Let's Go FMB group to make their presentation to BORCAB, have BORCAB then make the recommendation to the council to send it to the county? As we know, Councilor Woodson is the liaison for BORCAB, so that would be an official recommendation from official committee. I kind of agree with Councilor Veach and Councilor King on both their points. It felt like to me that this probably should have gone to BORCAB first and then come here, but I understand why it went that route as well. Doesn't change the fact that I'm in support of it, but what's the best course of action for the council to take? Is it to send it officially to the recommendation of BORCAB with the added details that hopefully they'll be able to present, and then the BORCAB makes a recommendation to the council?
You don't really, you
Or do we
don't
keep it-
really
I think that
need
gets it really
but-
complicated.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. Well,
Yeah, you don't, that is not needed, because citizens groups typically go directly to the elected body. I mean, that's what is common. And then there's no question, but they're not part of your group. But when you kind of hook them up with an advisory body, I'm just concerned. I don't want to have, this wonderful idea get tainted with questions about sunshine law.
okay, then what is your recommendation as steps moving forward?
Yeah,
My concern is I don't want it, my concern is I don't want it to go before the county unless as much detail that can be presented is presented. I don't want it to be a waste of the constituents that have put their time, effort, and money into it, along with Councilor Woodson's time, to be able to create the presentation, to go up and fail. I want to make sure when it does go before, one, we're doing it the right way, and two, it has the best chance of succeeding and catching the ear of those that own the property and will eventually make the decision to do something there.
That makes all the sense in the world, and, plan it however you want, but just make it very clear on the record that they're not part of the city.
And to your point, Mayor, isn't that something then we could count on Councilor Woodson with her expertise to call, if necessary, a halt to things and bring it back to us if necessary?
I mean,
yeah, I'm not opposed.
That's what I was going to add, is like, that's basically my job, along with Andy's as the liaison to this committee, and not to get another step involved with it. I think Andy and I can take it from here, along with Let's Go FMB.
I'm not sure I have the trust in Andy you do, but.
Jeez.
Well, and I think, and I can understand both points of it.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just, keeping it independent certainly allows for a lot more flexibility. And certainly, there's precedents with things like the Chamber of Commerce. They don't necessarily, they're not a public committee either. I just want to make sure that when we're presenting to the county, that they have the weight behind them to make so this is a real project and not just the idea of a group of people that's independent from the town.
Well, I think we've made that very clear, if anything, today. That when it does go there, that they will hopefully have the full support of the council and staff to do whatever the presentation is at that time.
Yeah.
I think, did we cover it all?
Hope so.
I think one thing, the mayor, you and I have talked about this. If only we had a CRA,
Oh, you just dropped that.
Community Revitalization Agency. They could, in the downtown, they could handle things like that. Could go straight through them, and you are the CRA.
That might be for another maybe that, okay.
Okay, my next item is another Let's Go FMB item. And this has to do with marketing and PR. And I literally was just on the phone yesterday, so I haven't even had a chance to talk with Jenny. But there is a group that is also interested in promoting marketing and public relations for the town, not for the town, but ideas for the town. And this is where I wanted to get Jenny involved in. And they are in the process of creating another presentation, not similar, but a presentation as to what is all entailed. I mean, there's some PR professionals on our citizens group, and they would like to make this put the presentation together, get Jenny's blessing on it, Jenny's involvement on it, and then be able to present to the town council. And knowing that we have to get approval for that, they were looking at the next town council meeting on October 16th to be able to present their ideas going forward to the council.
How does this play into, Becky, your concerns?
I don't
If-
see a
if-
problem with that.
Okay, that's all I needed to hear.
It's no different than
Nope, I
what was
just was
happening
making
today.
sure she was,
We just need to keep it like a Chamber of Commerce or like a Rotary Club. You know, just make it real clear that it's just not part of the city. But for instance, a Rotary Club might have the full, absolute commitment of the town behind it in a project. It just has to be kept separate.
easy enough?
And I know, how about, because I was, of course, reading the policies and procedures, that I know there's very strict rules about directing staff. And I know that applies to counselors, but if we get a private group they can be, I mean, I guess they can work with staff, but directing staff, I think it might be a line that violates our policies and procedures.
I don't want to
Well, I
speak
would
for,
suggest that everything would need to go through
Through
Andy
Andy?
and Frankie.
and I don't want to speak for Counselor Woodson, but I think she said she was just going to present ideas to Jenny. I don't think she was going to direct Jenny.
Yeah,
No, and it was actually to get Jenny's input more than directing Jenny. So could is there interest in the October 16th meeting agenda item to have them present?
Certainly consent from this counselor.
Now, is this something that it's going to be an action item, or something that's better off in an MMP for discussion?
Well, it would be more under a presentation item.
Because I know one thing we stumbled on before is saying that when you do a presentation at a town council meeting, then you usually have a lot of people who are there for business in front of it, for variances or whatever, and they're there with their planners and their attorneys, and it costs a lot of money for them to wait for a presentation. If we do it in M&P, we don't have that. That's one of the reasons why the state, or the University of Florida Fiber was moved to an M&P, just to make it less burdensome for the other people who are doing business in front of town council.
I'm okay, honestly, with either one. I can see the benefits to both. The M&P makes sense because then that's what it's for. Then we can have discussion, we can give direction, then it could come back to a meeting. But I also see the benefit of having it as a presentation, because then people can have public comment on it at that. They could see the presentation, they can make their public comment, and then you can make your decision one way or another once you hear from both sides. So I'm open to it being done on either one.
Well, and I think the reason we thought of the next October 16th meeting, we are getting ready, we're heading into season. There may be some ideas that come out of this that Jenny would like to incorporate in communications and everything else for the town. Our next M&P meeting that we could be ready for wouldn't be until November. So this gives us at least a 2-week jump.
I'm okay with deferring that decision to Andy and staff as to the load that we already have potentially for the October 16th meeting. If you feel it's something that, because I think your point is very valid, Councilor Veach, if someone's coming with lawyers and they're spending a lot of money to have people here, we have to be cognizant of that as well. So I'll defer whatever decision to the town attorney or the town manager and clerk that put the schedule together, so.
Okay, and then.
If I may, but it sounded like, to Councilor Veach's point earlier, at least two of you have agreed to put that on the agenda should we see that the agenda is light enough to add that.
And I think that that's part of the agenda management and the M&P is we get a list of all the things on the agenda, and then the staff can prioritize it and make sure we don't end up with these 8-hour meetings.
Well, we're only going on 3 hours, or just over 3 hours now, Bill. We got plenty of time now, but.
Let's bring him in now.
No, right? I'm okay with allowing, I see your point, though. I understand what you're saying, presentation from a citizen group is important. But I'll leave it to, I'm okay with leaving it up to Andy and Amy. If it is reasonable and feasible to have the presentation, I mean, maybe allow them time to get more detail. Is it a 3-hour presentation? Is it a 20-minute presentation? Is it an hour presentation?
I think it's more of a 10 to 15 minute.
Well, there you go. So I think that I have all the confidence in the world that the manager and the clerk can make that decision.
And if I could, I agree with that. But to Councilor Veach's point, because I made this point earlier, I think the subtle difference here, and it'll kind of vary on a case-by-case basis, but we are trying to set some precedents here as we proceed. So I think it's a fair point that these things normally would be at an M&P, and appropriately so, but this is a little unique because these are our residents. So when we have an outside entity coming in, I think we should try to push that towards the M&P, but if our own residents have a time-sensitive issue that they want to present, I think that should be a factor as well.
Is everyone okay with, let's just give clear direction. Is everyone okay with allowing the manager and the clerk to make that decision?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And I would expect that shows up on our agenda item list anyway, so we can see when what's coming in the future of our council meetings.
Councilor Woodson, anything else?
Just one last thing. After we pass the budget with the new fees and all that kind of thing, October 1 is the deadline for licensing renewals, and that's for vendors as well as short-term rentals and all that. So I heard a couple of different issues with some vendor renewals of just I think there was a confusion within the staff as to who's responsible now going forward for those license renewals. They couldn't find anyone. They came to the offices in person. They wanted to renew their PVAL licensing and that kind of thing, and no one knew who to tell them to go to or whatever. So I know it all happened pretty quickly, but I'm just saying we're going to have a lot of license renewals coming up between vendors and short-term rental licensing, and so we just need to get that process back into place. We haven't had to deal with it in the last year, so we just need to get that process back in place. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Who was next? Did you go?
No, I've just been.
Councilor Veach, you're next.
There's been a lot of discussion with some of the items that.
Okay. Got lost there. Which way we were going? I think it's Councilor Veach.
Yeah. So, just kind of an update on the Resilient Lee meetings. Like I said, it did come up about the economic revitalization portion of that, and there was a conversation about all the different aspects. The aspects that can go into economic revitalization are still there. It's just something that requires a little more thought now. So we're not just saying we want to help the businesses. We have to really come up with what within these things we can ask for that would help the businesses. The Resilient Lee, a couple of months ago, they said we're going to meet twice a month and really try to drive this through by December. I guess their attitude changed, so we haven't had a second meeting yet, and they've actually canceled the meeting for October, and they're pushing it from their day from December to now February. And it's really, I look at it and it's hard to get your arms around what they're actually presenting. They're putting all kinds of things in little pigeonholes about, how to allocate spending, but it's still a little general. So we haven't got to the point yet where we're saying, here's our project, we want to present this for funding. But it probably behooves us to think about things like in economic revitalization, maybe have the staff look into the things that would be available through that would help with economic revitalization without that name per se. Another thing is I was looking through our policies and procedures, and I know previous councils with us, we went through and we did some modifications to the policies and procedures, but we are obligated to follow them. And it even says in the policies and procedures that we're obligated to follow the policies and procedures. I would request that maybe we have Becky read through those and give us a presentation on the policies and procedures and any recommendations that you may see that we can improve those somehow, if there's consensus at the council, because I think it's important for everybody to know what the rules are.
I'm certainly not opposed to that. Becky?
Okay. Sure, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay.
And the other thing is something that it's just a little kind of clerical thing, is that when we've gone through different councils where everything was on a computer, everything was printed out, et cetera, I would just like to formally request that in our M&P printout with the agenda is that we get the spreadsheet that has the agenda item list with the proposed dates on it, just for our long-term planning. It's a useful tool, I think, to know where we're going and what the lists are, because there's plenty of things to put on the list, and I think it's a useful guide for council, a tool for council to figure out what they want to promote or maybe what can wait.
I certainly agree with that, Councilor Veach, and if you want to expand that to having our books hard copy before our council meetings again, I know our town clerk would be thrilled to do that for us. But I sure miss the hard copies of the paper. But I'm probably alone in that in my Luddite approach to life. Yeah.
I miss them, but also when you get the boilerplate stuff like a contract and you get 50, 60 pages that
I'm happy to skip some of that minutia if we need to, but just a general booklet with some of the, just so you could make notes on it is always wonderful. But you're right about the M&P. It'd be nice to see that. Yeah.
And that's all I have. Oh, and congratulations, Steve.
John, did I got
You already-
you.
I was first.
I couldn't remember which one.
I get you.
All right, so I'm last. The only thing many things have been covered already, but just something that I added to my list based on the emails that we got today for the funding from the state. I just want to kind of go over it a little bit so that everybody who doesn't understand what exactly it is. So we received 2 letters today from FDEM from the appropriation request that probably many people have heard about over the weekend, but nothing was official until we got those letters today. We received one for $5 million. That was a 0% loan for our FEMA PA projects. What that means is this allows us to put this funding towards R&D. There's several things on here that we put in for appropriation. So it was granted to us as a loan, and that essentially how that works is that money then can be used by staff to start designing a building or getting bids for stormwater or some of the other things that are on our list. And then once we get paid back through the FEMA PA process, that pays that loan back. So that's how that works. We also got an $8 million grant to go towards beach renourishment. So those are the 2 letters that we received for the appropriations request. And I know that there has been some talk over the weekend that that doesn't seem like a whole lot in the grand scheme of things of the $338 million. But you do have to pause and understand the reason that the staff went about asking for the appropriations, which was about $24.5 million or just under that we reached out. The state or anybody, for that matter, is not in the business of just giving someone money to sit in the bank and do nothing until they use it. So it's a process. Use our town hall, for example. If it's 10, 15, 20 million, whatever that costs, without knowing what that costs, it is very difficult for someone to give you money to do that. So this funding that we received in the $5 million will allow us to start to be able to do that, to be able to then go up there this year and say, this is what we're building, this is how we're going to do it, this is how much it's going to cost, and then potentially get more funding to fund that project. So it's a process that we go through. So we were advised to go about it that way. We did. We're receiving quite a bit of money, not including the money that we've gotten in the past. It's easy to forget that those debris trucks are gone now, and you know, the hundreds of millions of dollars that were spent from the federal government and the state to help with that cleanup, amongst other things. We could go on and on and on. So I don't want this to be about the town only got this. The town has received a lot. We're very thankful. Do we always wish we could have more? Certainly. Do we think the process is perfect? Absolutely not. I think everybody agrees that the process it's a new process that the state's going through. So we're working through it, but we did officially get those 2 letters today, so we can officially report on them that is the funding that we received. We're still in talks with them about what we're going to do this year, so it's a process. Be patient. We've been told there'll be more funding coming. We'll certainly be asking for more funding this year and next year and the year after that. But this will at least allow us to get moving and get the hard documentation that's needed to say this is exactly what we need and how we need it built, and this is why we want to build it this way, and then go back up to them with hat in hand and say we need more help. So this is one of the, yes, sir.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
There was a lot of confusion over the weekend because the Friday's press release that came out of the state, there was speculation that it didn't include the money for the lighting because that money was going to go directly to Florida Power and Light. Did we get any clarification on that piece of that puzzle?
So I can touch on that a little bit. Yeah, there was a lot of talk back and forth with the director, through Chris Holly, and myself and Representative Botana, and not exactly knowing until you have the hard letters. It's really hard to say how it was going to work out. That is what we heard. Now the latest, what we have heard, again, this is not official. We haven't gotten anything in writing, but it was that the money for the lighting project will go through the county, and the money that they're going to be receiving from this, and that the county has been directed. Again, this is just what we've heard and what we've been told, that they will be the ones funding that through that appropriation request. So if that is the case, and hopefully we'll be able to get hard answers on that today, if that's the case, then that would bring our appropriations up to 21 million, which is fairly close to what we asked for of the 24.5 million. And if you want it, you can certainly get it of what specifically we asked for the PA projects. Of the 24.5 million, the top 3 things were streetlights, beach renourishment, and stormwater were the top 3. And I believe, if real close, and Joe's here, if somebody really wants to know the exact numbers, but I believe that those 3 were just north of $20 million of the 24.5 million that we asked for, which left that 4 million in the process that for these PA projects to get those things started. So we got pretty close to what we asked for, should the lighting work out the way we think. So obviously we wish we would have been able to get more, but we followed the process that we were told would make the most sense, and we got fairly close to what it is that we asked for. So thank you to the legislatures for doing that. Thank you for the staff to put in all the time and Tidal Basin to. It was very, very tedious, very, very difficult, and it put a lot of pressure on FDEM to make decisions that not everybody's going to like, but it's part of the process, and we'll continue to ask for more money, and we thank them for all that they've given us, because they between the state, federal, and the county, I mean, we've really gotten a lot of money. I don't know what the total dollar amount. I would hate to task Joe with trying to track all of that down, because that would consume probably 6 months of his life, but it is a large, substantial amount of money, 200 million at least, from just debris cleanup that the town didn't have to pay for. Yeah. So we're certainly thankful. We'll continue to ask for more, and I know I'm rambling on, but just wanted some clarity.
I appreciate the additional clarification on the lighting, and that may have, I'm guessing, and because it's all speculative at this point, that may have gone to the county, since Estero Boulevard is a county road, so it may have been part of their thinking.
Yeah, so we did get an official quote from FPL on the entire island lighting control that we've been talking about. Everybody knows $7.9 million. It includes the side streets as well as Old San Carlos. FWC has approved the fixture. However, the fixture that the county sounds like they're using is not approved, but is approved. It's the same fixture, just a little bit bigger. And everything's been done. We've gotten the approval, and then now hearing how the last thing was the funding. How is it going to be funded? So I have no doubt that it's going to be funded, and I have no doubt that it's going to be done. It's just now it's not going directly through us to FPL. It's not going directly through FPL. Hopefully we'll get some more clarification on that part of it by the end of the day.
And if I could say, Mr. Mayor, it is a process, and it will there is another legislative session coming. So I would just, to your point, the state and the feds and the county, they've helped us in so many different ways. Based upon the ceremony on Thursday, you saw, this is to the mayor's credit, quite honestly, you saw basically the whole state legislative leadership on our island involved in our day of remembrance. And it's my sense that the mayor has not only built relationships, but these people are now completely invested in our island. And should there be a need for additional help, which I'm guessing there will be, those relationships have been developed for the future. So I think we need to be careful in terms of how we posture ourselves in terms of not being too harsh, because we've gotten quite a bit of help. Some of it, again, in areas that aren't even evident on that release that came out Friday. So I would encourage people just to hang in there, because the goodwill is definitely there, and more help is on the way. I've had some conversations with legislators at that event saying, hey, we're not done yet. And the mayor clearly has built these kind of relationships that are going to bear fruit in the future. So I appreciate all your hard efforts on that. And I think part of the challenge on Friday was having worked in the governor's office, I think they didn't do a very good job with their communications release. It could have been done a little bit more nuanced and helpful, but I think they're trying to recover from that.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say whoever hit the send button on that one had a hard day. But
Unsend.
Yeah, right. But again, I think that this $5 million 0% interest loan that will go towards these PA projects will really help catapult us to the next step of being able to ask for hard, drawn-out facts of this is what things cost. But you need to have the money to be able to procure people to get you those numbers, and this money will allow us to be able to do that. And when we go up there, I think it's the 18th of this month, Andy and I will be up there again, begging for money is the best way to put it. And this will allow us to harden up some of the numbers so that they can see exactly how much it's going to cost and how much they can give us. And that's all I have.
Move to adjourn.
There's a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any other discussion? Got a motion to adjourn by Counselor King, seconded by Counselor Beach. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned.